Chapter 73. I didn't expect the past Amitabha Sutra to be so powerful. Su Qin was amazed. He had only cultivated the past Amitabha Sutra for an hour, and he felt that his strength had increased as much as 10 days of hard work. The glazed golden core has also shrunk. Su Qin seemed to have sensed something as he muttered to himself. Normally, a glazed golden core would take Su Qin 1 to 2 months to absorb it. Because the glazed golden core contained too much medicinal power, even someone like Su Qin Arhat would need time to digest and absorb it. But just now, when Su Qin circulated the past Amitabha Sutra, he found that the glazed golden core in his lower abdomen was melting at a terrifying speed. Not bad, not bad. At this rate, I will be able to step into the second heaven of Arhat in a year at most. Su Qin's eyes lit up. Without the past Amitabha Sutra, even with the help of the glazed golden core, Su Qin would need close to 10 years to break through. But now the time was shortened by more than 10 times. And this was because the breakthrough of Arhat was not just about the accumulation of energy, but more importantly, it was about the understanding of heaven and earth. Otherwise, Su Qin's breakthrough would be even faster. Rumor has it that if one fully understands the past Amitabha Sutra, the Tathagata Sutra, and the future Amitabha Sutra, the 3 supreme scriptures of Buddhism, one will truly be free and unfettered. Su Qin's expression was slightly yearning. Unfortunately, although there are many benefits to cultivating the past Amitabha Sutra, the consumption of the glazed golden core is still too fast, Su Qin thought to himself. Originally, a complete glazed golden core was enough for Su Qin to absorb for 1 to 2 months, but now he would probably have to take a second glazed golden core in a week. There's some commotion outside? Su Qin's mind moved, and his terrifying divine sense quickly enveloped the entire Shaolin Temple. Although the vitality storm outside had begun to dissipate as Su Qin stopped cultivating, it was obvious that it would not completely disappear in a short time. Outside the back mountain forbidden area, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were hesitating whether or not they should enter. After all, the commotion just now was quite big. Even if Abbot Huiwen speculated based on the ancient books in the temple that Su Qin had made a breakthrough in his cultivation, he was still worried. Suddenly, at this moment, a calm voice resounded in the ears of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. All of you leave. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads immediately bowed slightly. Yes. Meanwhile, outside the Emperor of Tang's palace, Prince Li Sheng still had a look of disbelief on his face. Father made me the crown prince? Prince Li Sheng blinked his eyes in bewilderment. Although he had known his identity years ago, that he was a descendant of the imperial family. However, Li Sheng had never dreamed that he would one day become the crown prince. What was the crown prince? No matter in which dynasty, the crown prince was second only to the emperor, and after the emperor died, he was the rightful candidate to sit on the throne. It could be said that if Li Sheng became the crown prince, he would be the future master of the empire of Tang. Is this true? Li Sheng looked at Su Yueyun next to him. As early as a few years ago, he followed eunuch Lu to the imperial palace, and not long after, he brought Su Yueyun here. Don't be too happy. It's not a good thing for you to become the crown prince, Su Yueyun shook his head and said. It's not a good thing. Prince Li Sheng also calmed down. Even he himself had never thought of becoming the crown prince, let alone others. The most important thing was, the Emperor of Tang made him the crown prince. What would the other princes think? What would the ministers in the imperial court think? Over the years, Li Sheng's brothers had been fighting openly and secretly for the position of the crown prince, and they had almost shed all pretenses of cordiality. Would they allow the position of the crown prince to fall on Li Sheng's head? There were also the ministers in the imperial court. They had long placed their bets on a certain prince, and bet everything that they had on the prince being able to inherit the throne. If the crown prince was gone in the end, what would these ministers who had already taken sides think? Just thinking about it quickly made Prince Li Sheng's scalp tingle, and he felt as if he had fallen into a hopeless situation. Don't worry. Since His Majesty has made such a decision, there must be a reason for it. Su Yueyun comforted him. I hope so. Li Sheng nodded stiffly. At this moment, suddenly a servant hurriedly rushed in. Your Highness, someone from the imperial palace is here. Someone from the imperial palace is here? Prince Li Sheng was slightly taken aback and immediately said, I know, I'll go over now. So, Li Sheng took Su Yueyun outside. At this moment, the door had long been surrounded by the forbidden army, and a eunuch wearing a purple official uniform was standing there with a smile. Purple? Li Sheng only felt a roar in his head. Having been in Chang and for so long, Li Xing naturally knew what purple represented in the imperial palace. That was the head eunuch Zhao, who was second only to the Emperor of Tang in the entire imperial palace. Under normal circumstances, eunuch Zhao would serve the Emperor of Tang, and it was absolutely impossible for him to leave the imperial palace. But now eunuch Zhao appeared outside the door. Thinking of this, Li Xing felt a little scared. "Your Highness." Seeing Li Xing come out, eunuch Zhao bowed slightly. "Eunuch Zhao." Li Xing immediately returned the bow with a solemn expression. "I am under His Majesty's order to take your Highness to the Eastern Palace." Eunuch Zhao said slowly. "The Eastern Palace?" Li Xing was slightly taken aback and said, "I'll pack up right away and go to the Eastern Palace with eunuch Zhao." "There's no need." Eunuch Zhao shook his head slightly and said, "Your Highness can go with me now. As for the things, the Eastern Palace has prepared everything." "But," Li Xing looked hesitant. He looked at Su Yueyun and asked tentatively, "Then Yun'er and I will go to the Eastern Palace with eunuch Zhao." "Yun'er?" Eunuch Zhao looked at Su Yueyun and shook his head. "Only the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess can stay in the Eastern Palace. As for others, they can't enter." Although Su Yueyun was Li Sheng's wife, she had not been officially conferred the title of Crown Princess. After all, even Li Sheng had only been informed today that he had become the Crown Prince. How could he have had the time to confer the title to Su Yueyun? "You go to the Eastern Palace first. I'm not in a hurry." Su Yueyun saw Li Sheng hesitate and immediately said in a low voice. The one standing in front of them was eunuch Zhao. If Li Sheng's hesitation angered eunuch Zhao, it would probably cause trouble for the Emperor of Tang. "Your Highness, let's go." Eunuch Zhao saw that Li Sheng did not respond and frowned, then glanced at Su Yueyun again. With this glance, eunuch Zhao glanced at the jade pendant that Su Yueyun had been wearing this entire time. The jade pendant was extremely ordinary, but Su Yueyun carried it close to her body. It was clear that she valued it very much. However, eunuch Zhao seemed to notice something. His gaze instantly focused on the jade pendant at Su Yueyun's waist. "This is?" The more eunuch Zhao looked, the more his heart palpitated. In the end, his expression changed and his face filled with disbelief. Chapter 74. This is a strand of divine sense of a peak first grade? Eunuch Zhao's expression was extremely solemn as he stared at the jade pendant hanging on Su Yueyun's waist. Although the strand of divine sense in the jade pendant was hidden very deeply, eunuch Zhao was also a peak first grade. If he wanted to, it naturally could not be hidden from him. What exactly is going on? Could it be that the commoner woman His Highness married has a peak first grade backing her? Eunuch Zhao only felt that it was extremely absurd. How rare is a peak first grade? Which one of them does not oversee a region and live a carefree life? The Emperor of Tang hid Li Sheng among the commoners, eunuch Zhao also knew. Even eunuch Lu, who had always been secretly protecting Li Sheng, was arranged by eunuch Zhao. Eunuch Zhao knew everything about Li Sheng like the back of his hand. As for the daughter of the family Su who married Li Sheng, as well as all the information about the family Su, it was naturally placed in front of eunuch Zhao long ago. What eunuch Zhao did not even dream of was that the daughter of the family Su in his eyes was actually a peak first grade backing her. Could it be a coincidence? This jade pendant was coincidentally picked up by Su Yueyun? Eunuch Zhao's thoughts turned quickly, but in the end he rejected this idea. There were only so many peak first grade in the world, and even fewer peak first grade who could condense divine sense. As for being willing to split a strand of divine sense and place it in the jade pendant, there were almost no peak first grade. How could the jade pendant Su Yueyun picked up by coincidence be related to a peak first grade? Splitting one's divine sense, if one does not have the relevant secret technique, even for a peak first grade, it will consume one's origin. Unless it's someone who really values him, no peak rank one would do that. In a flash, eunuch Zhao's thoughts fluctuated. Who is it? One possibility after another flashed through eunuch Zhao's mind. And just as eunuch Zhao was thinking, Prince Li Sheng was obviously persuaded by Su Yueyun, and was prepared to temporarily go to the East Palace with eunuch Zhao. After some time he would ask the Emperor of Tang for the Crown Princess to confer Su Yueyun the Crown Princess title, and then he would take Su Yueyun. Eunuch Zhao, let's go. Li Sheng reluctantly looked at Su Yueyun and said to eunuch Zhao. Actually, it's not impossible, it's not negotiable. Eunuch of Su Yueyun of His Highness Princess Su, it's only a matter of time. Sooner or she, it's Princess. Princess? And it? Eunuch Zhao glanced at the jade pendant on Su Yueyun's waist, bowed slightly and said, "Please follow me." Eunuch Zhao said this. Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun were stunned. What was going on? Why did Eunuch Zhao suddenly change his mind? Although Li Sheng had never interacted with Eunuch Zhao before, he had a rough idea of what kind of person Eunuch Zhao was from the rumors spread by others. In the entire palace, except for His Majesty, no one could change Eunuch Zhao's mind. The princes could not. The ministers could not. But now, Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun looked at each other and could only bite the bullet and follow Eunuch Zhao. Half a day later, the Emperor of Tang's palace. Your Majesty, the commoner girl that His Highness married has a great identity. Eunuch Zhao bowed slightly. Then Eunuch Zhao informed the Emperor of Tang that he found the divine sense of a peak grade 1 great grandmaster on Su Yueyun. Interesting. The Emperor of Tang's demeanor was obviously much older, and he even coughed violently while speaking. Seeing this scene, Eunuch Zhao's expression changed slightly. He immediately stepped forward, stretched out his right hand and slowly pressed it on the Emperor of Tang. After a while, the Emperor of Tang's complexion recovered a little, and he waved his hand and said, "What do you think the real owner of the jade pendant means? This old servant doesn't know." Eunuch Zhao paused for a while and then continued, "But this old servant thinks that the real owner of the jade pendant should not be interested in the battle for the throne. The real function of that jade pendant is to protect, and there is no other purpose." Eunuch Zhao said slowly. It was precisely because of this that he changed his mind and agreed to let Su Yueyun and Li Sheng live together in the East Palace. After all, in the face of a peak grade 1 great grandmaster who has not shown any malice, showing goodwill appropriately can only be beneficial and not harmful. If the peak grade 1 great grandmaster standing behind Su Yueyun is willing to support Prince Li Sheng, let alone living in the East Palace, even conferring the title of Empress in the future will be a matter of a few words. As long as he can win over a peak grade 1, any price is worth paying. I know. It seems that the luck of this child is better than that of this emperor. The Emperor of Tang leaned slightly on the dragon throne and rubbed his eyebrows, trying to wake himself up. Eunuch Zhao waited on the side and did not speak. Suddenly the palace fell into silence. After a long time, the Emperor of Tang said slowly, "To be honest, how long can I live?" Eunuch Zhao's expression changed slightly when he heard this. After a moment of silence he said, 3 years. Even if this old servant does his best, I can only guarantee that your Majesty can live for 3 years. 3 years? It's almost enough time." The Emperor of Tang's expression did not change, as if he didn't hear how long he could live at all. Shaolin Temple. Since obtaining the past Amitabha Sutra, Su Qin seems to have returned to the time when he was in grade 9 martial Dao. He can feel his strength improving every day. The only drawback is that it consumes too many glazed golden cores. It's almost time. It's time to break through. In the back mountain forbidden area, Su Qin sat cross-legged, slowly circulating the true essence in his body and adjusting his state. After consuming dozens of glazed golden cores, Su Qin's cultivation base finally reached peak Arhat first heavenly layer. Let's start. With a thought in Su Qin's mind, 20 glazed golden cores suddenly appeared in front of him. In order to ensure that the breakthrough is foolproof, Su Qin also put in a lot of effort and prepared to use 20 glazed golden cores to force a breakthrough. 1 glazed golden core is enough for a venerable Arhat to digest and absorb for several months. With 20 of them added together, the terrifying medicinal power is probably enough to make venerable Arhat explode. If Su Qin didn't have the past Amitabha Sutra to protect his body, he wouldn't dare to do this. Gulp. Su Qin swallowed a glazed golden core and began to circulate the past Amitabha Sutra to refine the rolling medicinal power. Almost instantly, Su Qin's body began to slowly transform again. Time slowly passed, and Su Qin's aura became stronger and stronger, as if the vast void was endless. If it wasn't for the back mountain forbidden area and the Buddha's palm seal left by Tuo Arahan, Su Qin's aura would have soared into the sky and suppressed the entire Shaolin Temple. Just like this, Su Qin's true essence became more and more boiling. Finally, at a certain moment, it seemed to have broken through some kind of shackles and reached a new realm. Bus. I finally entered the second heavenly layer of Arhat. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and a smile appeared on his face. Chapter 75. Back Mountain Forbidden Grounds. After Su Qin broke through, he took a deep breath. In an instant, the surging heaven and earth essence chi was sucked into his mouth like a whale sucking in water. I'm so hungry. Su Qin felt that every bone and muscle in his body was trembling, crazily devouring the heaven and earth essence chi that was pouring into his body. Unfortunately, the heaven and earth essence chi was thin to begin with and could not satisfy the replenishment of his body after the breakthrough. Su Qin had no choice but to take out several glazed golden cores. After the glazed golden cores as pure as glass entered his mouth, they turned into a huge amount of medicinal power that filled every part of his body. Half an hour later, Su Qin opened his eyes again. I didn't expect that after breaking through to the second heaven, I still need a lot of heaven and earth essence chi to replenish my body, Su Qin whispered to himself. If he had not prepared the glazed golden cores, he would have only been able to absorb the heaven and earth essence chi slowly and even cause some damage to his body. But it's all over now. Now I've truly entered the second heaven realm of Arhat. Su Qin's thoughts turned and he looked at his hands, carefully feeling something. In terms of true essence, it's at least 2 to 3 times stronger. My physical body isn't as exaggerated as true essence, but it's still improved. As for my divine sense, it's almost twice as pure, and its range has expanded greatly. Su Qin continued to speculate and finally came to a conclusion. The current me is at least 5 times stronger than before the breakthrough. Su Qin was very satisfied. Originally, a venerable Arhat was already a taboo among taboo, enough to suppress all demons and monsters. But now Su Qin was equivalent to 5 venerable Arhat. What did that mean? As long as Su Qin wanted to, he could now sweep the world. The empire of Tang and Meng Yuan could all stand aside. First, stabilize the realm. Su Qin slowly collected his thoughts. The so-called stabilization of one's realm was naturally not to worry about one's realm slipping. Now that Su Qin had completely stepped into the second heavenly layer, unless he suffered from chi deviation on the spot and his true essence went berserk, it was absolutely impossible for him to drop his realm. Buddhist cultivation techniques were known for their deep foundations, let alone a supreme scripture like the past Amitabha Sutra. The reason why Su Qin wanted to stabilize his realm was because he wanted to familiarize himself with his skyrocketing power. Over the next few months, Su Qin began to read some Buddhist scriptures in addition to his cultivation. Although it had been more than 20 years and Su Qin had already gone through these Buddhist scriptures, now that Su Qin had entered the realm of Arhat, he had a different feeling when he read them again. During this period, Su Qin also didn't forget to sign in. The holy elixirs, divine arts, and secret manuals that he obtained from signing in every day were all thrown into the system space by Su Qin for future use. The flow of time in the system space has almost stopped, so there will be no problem of elixirs losing effectiveness. While reading the Buddhist scriptures, Su Qin would occasionally give advice to Jianghu. After this little novice monk entered the 7th grade martial artist, he was still preparing to rush into the middle realm in a short time. But in the end he was stopped by Su Qin. The possessor of Buddha's heart can indeed have unimaginable convenience in martial arts cultivation. But in the past, every possessor of Buddha's heart was unable to achieve the realm of Arhat. Instead, some people who started out ordinary finally set foot on the great Tao. As for the reason in the middle, Su Qin probably guessed it. Therefore he let Jianghu slowly experience the difference of each realm and then try to break through. On this day, Su Qin was thinking about how many glazed golden cores he should take when suddenly his expression changed and he looked outside the back mountain forbidden area. He saw Jianghu standing there cautiously, not knowing whether to come in or not. Come in. A calm voice sounded in Jianghu's ear. Yes. Venerable One. Jianghu let out a sigh of relief. Jianghu came in front of Su Qin. After a few years, Jianghu has basically gotten rid of the immaturity of a teenager. Coupled with the internal strength of a 7th grade martial artist, he is basically the same as a normal man. Venerable One. Jianghu respectfully bowed to Su Qin. Because Su Qin never said that he would accept Jianghu as a disciple, Jianghu can only be like Abbot Huiwen and call Su Qin Venerable One. Are you going to break through? Su Qin glanced at Jianghu and said. In fact, as early as before Jianghu came in, Su Qin already knew about Jianghu's situation. Yes. Venerable One, I can't suppress it anymore. Jianghu said in a low voice. Since you can't suppress it, then break through. Su Qin said casually, break through here. Su Qin asked Jianghu to postpone his breakthrough, not because he can't break through. Now that Jianghu has almost reached the limit of suppression, if he doesn't break through, it will be harmful to himself. Yes. When Jianghu heard this, he immediately sat cross-legged. Compared to the vision caused by Su Qin's breakthrough, Jianghu's breakthrough was simply silent. In fact, this was normal. The cultivation of martial artists below the upper realm is mainly focused on the physical body and internal strength. and it doesn't involve the world's essence qi at all. Since it has nothing to do with the world's essence qi, there will naturally be no vision. In less than half an hour, Jianghu stepped from the 7th grade martial artist to the 6th grade martial artist. There is only a difference of 1 realm between the 6th grade and the 7th grade, but it is the difference between the lower realm and the middle realm. This bottleneck had trapped countless martial artists in the pugilistic world. Thank you, Venerable One. Jianghu got up and said respectfully. Since you have broken through, go down. Su Qin looked at Jianghu and said. Venerable One, however, Jianghu looked hesitant. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. What's the matter? Su Qin raised his eyebrows and asked directly. With Su Qin's understanding of Jianghu in the past few years, if the other party has nothing important, he wouldn't dare to speak like this. Venerable One, I found a stone door under a hill near the Dharma court. There are some Buddha patterns carved on the stone door. It's very mysterious. Jianghu paused for a while and continued, this stone door is very heavy, I can't push it open at all. Stone door, Su Qin repeated in a low voice, his huge divine sense quickly spread out, like a hurricane, sweeping back and forth the place that Jianghu mentioned several times. However, what surprised Su Qin was that he didn't find the stone door that Jianghu mentioned. Venerable One. I seem to feel that something in the stone door is attracting me. Jianghu's face was full of confusion. Something in the stone door was attracting Jianghu, but Jianghu couldn't push the stone door open. This made him feel very conflicted. Su Qin was silent. If Jianghu wasn't lying, it meant that the stone door had used some method to deceive his divine sense. Chapter 76. Interesting. Su Qin's expression did not change, but his interest was piqued. One must know that he was now the venerable arhat of the second heaven. Under the cover of his divine sense, almost everything was visible. Unless it was a powerhouse of the same level, there was no way he could miss anything. Could it be that the stone gate was the work of a certain venerable arhat of the Shaolin temple? Su Qin pondered in his heart. He did not suspect that Jianghu was lying. First, because Jianghu did not have the guts to do so. Second, because the place Jianghu said was in the Shaolin temple. If Su Qin wanted to verify it, he could do it in an instant. It seems that there are still some secrets in the Shaolin temple that I don't know, Su Qin sighed in his heart. The Shaolin temple was a major martial arts sect with thousands of years of heritage. There were many venerable arhat. Su Qin would not believe that it did not have some foundation. Venerable, what I said is true. Jianghu saw that Su Qin did not speak for a long time. He thought that Su Qin did not believe him and suddenly became anxious. Hearing this, Su Qin smiled and said softly, I know. Now lead the way. I will accompany you to have a look. Su Qin was very curious about which venerable arhat of the Shaolin temple left the stone gate. With Jianghu leading the way, Su Qin came to the stone gate. It's here? Su Qin glanced around. This was the back of a hill. It was overgrown with grass and trees. Usually, almost no disciples would come here. And the stone gate that Jianghu mentioned was in an inconspicuous corner. This is, Su Qin sensed it carefully, heaven and earth formation. Su Qin narrowed his eyes. Whether it was venerable arhat or the martial arts legend, they had both transcended the realm of the 9 ranks of the martial arts path. Their cultivation was no longer limited to their own bodies. Instead, it was more about comprehending the heavens and earth. As for the heaven and earth formation, it was something that venerable arhat had comprehended from heaven and earth. There were many types of heaven and earth great arrays. Some were more inclined towards suppression, such as the heaven and earth great array in the demon suppressing tower. Some leaned towards killing enemies, while others leaned towards concealment. The heaven and earth formation on the stone door in front of them belonged to the concealment type. It was because of this heaven and earth great array that Su Qin's divine sense could be temporarily concealed. Venerable One, this is the place. Jianghu pointed at the stone door and said in a low voice. I understand. Su Qin took a step forward and appeared outside the stone door. Where is this? In Su Qin's pupils, there was an inexplicable whirlpool spinning. Since he knew that there was a heaven and earth great array here, Su Qin naturally would not continue to explore with his divine consciousness. Rumble. Su Qin raised his right hand and gently pressed on the stone door. Suddenly, it was as if he had touched a certain mechanism. The whole stone door began to slowly retreat, revealing a dark entrance. Venerable One, Jianghu was dumbfounded. He had tried his best, but he still couldn't open the stone door. But in Su Qin's hands, the stone door was so obedient, and it was opened directly? Su Qin did not speak and walked towards the entrance unhurriedly. Through the eye of truth, Su Qin was very sure that there was nothing in the entrance that could threaten him. Su Qin walked along the stone steps in the entrance and kept walking inside. Shen Ku, on the other hand, stood outside obediently. He didn't want to go in and cause trouble for Su Qin. Su Qin walked down the stone steps and came to a very empty secret room. There were many bookshelves in the secret room, and many Buddhist scriptures were placed on them. However, most of the Buddhist scriptures had already rotted and only a few were left. Some Buddhist scriptures made of special bark were barely preserved. This secret room has existed for at least 1,000 years. Su Qin guessed in his heart as he walked deeper into the secret room. Soon, he reached the end of the path and saw a monk in a golden cassock sitting there quietly with his legs crossed. The monk in the golden cassock was no longer breathing. Obviously he had already passed away. He is Tuoyarahan? Su Qin carefully looked at the monk in the golden cassock and his expression changed slightly. Tuoyarahan was the last venerable arhat of the Shaolin Temple. Naturally, there were pictures of him in the temple for future disciples to admire. In fact, not only Tuoyarahan, but all the other venerable arhat of the Shaolin Temple were the same. Tuoyarahan from 900 years ago. Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly. There were many rumors about Tuoyarahan in the Shaolin Temple. As the last venerable arhat, Tuoyarahan passed away in a hurry before he was 400 years old in order to suppress the devil Buddha. Even the Buddha's palm was lost because of this. No wonder I didn't see Tuoyarahan's Dharmakaya in the 1,000 Buddhas hall. So it was here? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. This place should have been set up by Tuoyarahan before he passed away. The heaven and earth great formation outside should also be something he left behind. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. Although he didn't know why Tuoyarahan didn't pass away in the 1,000 Buddhas hall but chose this secret room instead, it didn't matter now. That's right. This place has existed for thousands of years. Will there be Tao accumulation for me to sign in? Su Qin's heart moved. It just so happened that he didn't have a chance to sign in today, so he tried to say in his heart, "System, sign in for me." Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained Millennium Bodhi Heart. Millennium Bodhi Heart? Su Qin looked happy. Bodhi Heart is a sacred object of Buddhism and is extremely precious. The Shaolin Temple has been open for thousands of years, but very few Bodhi Hearts have appeared. The number of Bodhi Hearts is even rarer than Venerable Arhat. Even an ordinary Bodhi Heart can let a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster see their true nature, have frequent epiphanies, and greatly reduce the possibility of cultivation deviation, let alone a Millennium Bodhi Heart. More than 10 years ago, if Abbot Huiwen had a Bodhi Heart when he was breaking through, even if he failed in the end, he wouldn't have cultivation deviation. Unfortunately, the last Bodhi Heart that appeared in the Shaolin Temple was lost hundreds of years ago and hasn't been recovered yet. As for the Millennium Bodhi Heart, in the ancient records of the Shaolin Temple, this kind of Millennium Bodhi Heart only exists in legends, and no one can prove whether the Millennium Bodhi Heart exists in the world or not. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly. After signing in, he obtained a Millennium Bodhi Heart. Even if Su Qin turned around and left now, he still gained a lot. Glancing at the pale golden Millennium Bodhi Heart that suddenly appeared in the system space, Su Qin calmed down and looked at Tuoyarahan again. As Venerable Arhat, his body is very strong. Even after thousands of years, he can still maintain his appearance. Su Qin glanced at Tuoyarahan, and his eyes quickly fell on a stone wall in front of Tuoyarahan. Huh. Su Qin just glanced at the stone wall, and his expression changed as if he saw something incredible. Chapter 77. I, Tua, am guilty. I, Tua, am the eternal sinner of the Shaolin Temple. At the beginning of the stone wall was this line of bloody words, full of endless regret. This stone wall was right in front of Tuoyarahan, and the bloody words on it were obviously written by Tuoyarahan. It should be that Tuoyarahan had suffered greatly before his death, and finally carved these words. Guilty? Tuoyarahan is the venerable arhat of the Shaolin Temple. Even if the Buddha's palm was lost in the end, it was also because of the suppression of the devil Buddha. No matter how you look at it, he is not guilty. Su Qin's thoughts turned quickly, and he quickly looked at the bottom of the stone wall. Su Qin had a feeling that everything he saw next was probably the biggest secret of the Shaolin Temple 900 years ago, during the era of Tuoyarahan. A moment later, Su Qin basically finished reading the bloody words on the stone wall. According to the description of Tuoyarahan, he achieved Arhat when he was 150 years old and was invincible in the world. Finally, when he was traveling the world, he received a disciple. This disciple's qualifications were terrifying to the extreme, and even far surpassed the young Tuoyarahan. This made Tuoyarahan overjoyed, and he felt that there was hope for the inheritance of the Shaolin Temple. One must know that even the Venerable Arhat could only protect the Shaolin Temple for 500 years. After 500 years, when the time comes, the Venerable Arhat will also pass away. But the disciple that Tuoyarahan accepted made him see hope. He saw the hope of breaking through the Arhat realm. Sure enough, Tuoyarahan's disciple completed 3 transformations in a few decades, reaching grade 1 great perfection, and achieved Arhat before the age of 100. Achieving Arhat before the age of 100, what kind of terrifying qualifications is this? However, things changed. After Tuoyarahan's disciple achieved Arhat, his temperament suddenly changed, and finally he even fought with Tuoyarahan. In the end, this disciple turned into the Devil Buddha, and wanted to destroy the Shaolin Temple. When Su Qin saw this, he was silent. Although Su Qin had long known from the ancient books of the Shaolin Temple that the Devil Buddha, who almost destroyed the Shaolin Temple 900 years ago, was a disciple of the Shaolin Temple. But Su Qin did not expect that the Devil Buddha was not only a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, but also a pro-disciple of Tuoyarahan. Tuoyarahan is the current Venerable Arhat of the Shaolin Temple. How high is his status? And the Devil Buddha, as a pro-disciple of Tuoyarahan, in the entire Shaolin Temple, I am afraid that he is second only to Tuoyarahan. No wonder Tuoyarahan feels guilty. It turns out that the magic that almost destroyed the Shaolin Temple was the disciple that Tuoyarahan painstakingly cultivated. Su Qin sighed leisurely. Until now, he finally understood why Tuoyarahan chose to pass away in meditation here and not in the Thousand Buddhas Hall. Perhaps it was because he was ashamed to face the ancestors of the Shaolin Temple. Su Qin had a rough idea of what happened later. After realizing that not only did he not cultivate the next Venerable Arhat of the Shaolin Temple, but he also became a great devil, who would bring disaster to the world, Tuoyarahan chose to suppress the Devil Buddha without hesitation. However, Tuoyarahan did not expect that the Devil Buddha, who had only stepped into the realm of Arhat for a few decades, would have reached a level similar to his. Devil Chi and Buddhist power changed freely with his every move, and he was actually able to faintly suppress Tuoyarahan. This scene made Tuoyarahan decide to suppress the Devil Buddha no matter the price. Otherwise, if the Devil Buddha was allowed to grow for a few more decades, who in the world would be able to suppress him? In the end, Tuoyarahan used Buddha's palm as the price of 100 years of Shoyuan to suppress the Devil Buddha. After the Devil Buddha was suppressed, Tuoyarahan knew that he wouldn't live for much longer, so he hurriedly chose this place to pass away. What a pity. Su Qin shook his head slightly and glanced at the 2 wooden boxes placed in front of Tuoyarahan. Inside the wooden boxes were the Buddhist techniques that Tuoyarahan practiced and a Bodhi heart. Su Qin naturally didn't care about these. In the past 20 years of signing in at the Shaolin Temple, he had obtained countless Buddhist techniques, from the most powerful techniques like Buddha's palm, to the most ordinary techniques. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had obtained a vast amount of them. As for the Bodhi heart, if Su Qin hadn't received the 1,000-year Bodhi heart just now, he might have taken a few more glances at this Bodhi heart. But at this moment, the 1,000-year Bodhi heart was placed in the system space. Compared to the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, this Bodhi heart in front of him was no different from a stone on the side of the road. It was nothing at all. I finally understand the origin of the Devil Buddha. So he's the only direct disciple of Tuoyarahan. Su Qin glanced at Tuoyarahan, who had passed away 900 years ago, and felt a little complicated. Perhaps for the Tuoyarahan, at that time, when he accepted the Devil Buddha as his disciple, he never thought that one day he would personally nurture a Devil Buddha. It's time to go. With a thought, the 2 wooden boxes placed in front of Tuoyarahan fell into Su Qin's hands. He didn't like these things, but Jianghu outside could use them. While Su Qin's thoughts were fluctuating, he turned around and left the secret room. As for the Dharma body of Tuoyarahan, that had passed away, Su Qin had no intention of moving. Firstly, it was because passing away here meant pa. Secondly, Tuoyarahan cultivated the Devil Buddha that almost destroyed the Shaolin Temple. Even if it was unintentional, a mistake was still a mistake. Outside the stone door, Jianghu's eyes widened as he stared at the stone door. Why hasn't the Venerable One come out yet? Jianghu had a worried look on his face. Although in Jianghu's heart, the Venerable One was omnipotent, He still hadn't come out after such a long time. At this moment, a slight sound of footsteps came from inside the stone door. Then Su Qin's figure slowly walked out. Venerable One. Jianghu trotted to Su Qin's side, and at the same time, carefully looked inside the stone door. Under Jianghu's gaze, the stone door began to slowly block the entrance, and everything returned to its original state. You don't have to come to this place in the future. Su Qin glanced at Jianghu, and directly threw the wooden box containing the Bodhi heart into his hand. This is for you. After signing in and obtaining the Millennium Bodhi heart, ordinary Bodhi hearts had basically lost their attraction to Su Qin. Even 10,000 Bodhi hearts couldn't compare to a Millennium Bodhi heart. To others, the Bodhi heart was extremely precious, but in Su Qin's eyes, it was like a dispensable stone. If anyone asks, just say that I gave it to you. After saying this, Su Qin's figure disappeared from where he stood. Chapter 78. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. Look at the 1,000-year Bodhi heart. With a thought from Su Qin, a faint golden 1,000-year Bodhi heart with mysterious patterns on its surface appeared in front of Su Qin. As soon as this 1,000-year Bodhi heart appeared, Su Qin felt an aura of enlightenment envelop him. Under this aura, Su Qin found that his thinking speed increased by several times, and he became extremely clear-headed and rational. Even the Arhat's true essence in his body became extremely smooth. As expected of the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, Su Qin was amazed. He had tried the Bodhi heart before Tuarahan's Dharmakaya passed away. But unfortunately, the Bodhi heart that Tuarahan had could only make Su Qin slightly clear-headed. As for the rest, it had no effect at all. Compared to the 1,000-year Bodhi heart in front of Su Qin, it was as good as nothing. After Su Qin played with the 1,000-year Bodhi heart for a while, he turned his gaze and looked at the entire back mountain forbidden area. Devil Buddha, Su Qin sighed softly. 900 years ago, it could be said that the Shaolin Temple was at its most prosperous period. In the same era, two Arhat, Pao and Devil Buddha were born. Two Arhat in one sect. This was simply inconceivable. But unfortunately, it didn't take long for the Shaolin Temple's prosperity to decline. For 900 years, even if the Devil Buddha was suppressed, every 100 years he would split out a strand of devil will to bewitch the Shaolin Temple disciples and form the Devil Buddha's descendants, constantly depleting the Shaolin Temple's foundation. Otherwise, even if Tuarahan had passed away in a hurry, and the most powerful divine skill, Buddha's palm, had suddenly been lost. 900 years have passed. The Shaolin Temple may not have given birth to a venerable Arhat, but it is not to the point where there is no grade 1 great grandmaster in this generation. They were almost squeezed out of the great sects of the world. According to the information Pao left behind on the stone wall, although the Devil Buddha is stronger than him, there is a limit to his strength. At most, Pao is at the second firmament? Su Qin pondered slowly. And after being suppressed for 900 years, the Devil Buddha even gave up his physical body in order to survive, surviving as a devil will. His strength has probably fallen below Arhat's level. Su Qin stood up. It's time to get rid of the Devil Buddha once and for all. Su Qin made up his mind. 10 years ago, Su Qin quietly entered the forbidden area of the back mountain in order to sign in. And he also met the Devil Buddha face to face. At that time, the Devil Buddha disguised himself as an enlightened monk and tried to bewitch Su Qin, trying to take away Su Qin's physical body and get rid of the suppression of the seal. Unfortunately, the Devil Buddha didn't expect that the Golden Buddha in Su Qin's ancestral aperture could easily control the sealing power of the Buddha's palm, in the forbidden area of the back mountain. In this case, not only did the Devil Buddha not get rid of the suppression of the seal, but Su Qin also reconsolidated the seal and completely suppressed him. Although the Devil Buddha has been suppressed by me again, he is still a hidden danger. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Su Qin also obtained the Devil Will Split Parasitism technique. He knew that even if the Devil Buddha gave up his physical body and survived as a devil will, he could at most live for more than 1,000 years. If this continued, the devil will would also decay. In other words, even if Su Qin didn't care about anything now, the Devil Buddha would slowly die under the suppression of the seal after more than 100 years. But Su Qin was still worried. Since the Devil Buddha could create the Devil Will Split Parasitism technique and obtain Shoyuan, who far surpassed Venerable Arhat, would he create another secret technique to continue living? In Su Qin's eyes, the most unreliable method was suppression. It was fine for ordinary people, but for a genius with terrifying aptitude like the Devil Buddha, as long as he didn't die, he might be able to break free from the shackles in the future and soar into the sky. Su Qin felt that such a genius would only be at ease if he killed him with his own hands. 900 years ago, Toarahan couldn't do anything to the Devil Buddha, so he had no choice but to suppress him. But today, 900 years later, Su Qin was no longer Toarahan. With Su Qin's current strength coupled with the countless methods and trump cards he had, and even the Buddha's palm, even if the Devil Buddha was at his peak, he would have to admit defeat when facing Su Qin, let alone after being suppressed for 900 years. Open. With a thought, Su Qin communicated with the Golden Buddha in the ancestral aperture between his eyebrows and used it to control the sealing power of the entire forbidden area in the back mountain. Instantly. Rumble. The forbidden area in the back mountain began to rumble. With the forbidden area in the back mountain as the origin, the entire Shaolin Temple also shook. The seal of the forbidden area in the back mountain was created by Toarahan using the Buddha's palm, and the entire Shaolin Temple to suppress the Devil Buddha. If he wanted to open the seal, it would definitely cause a huge commotion. What happened? Why is there such a vibration? Abbot Huiwen and the court heads' expressions changed, and they looked in the direction of the back mountain almost at the same time. Is it the forbidden area in the back mountain? What's going on? The commandment court head looked dignified. The Devil Buddha was suppressed in the forbidden area in the back mountain. If something went wrong, it would be a disaster for the entire Shaolin Temple. The other court heads also realized this, and their expressions were extremely ugly. Why are you panicking? The Venerable is also in the forbidden area in the back mountain. No matter what happens with the Venerable here, our Shaolin Temple will definitely be able to get through safely. Seeing the court heads' expressions change, Abbot Huiwen immediately reprimanded them. As soon as these words came out, the court heads suddenly came to their senses. Yes, what were they worried about? With the Venerable guarding the forbidden area in the back mountain, even if the Devil Buddha really escaped, what could he do? In the forbidden area in the back mountain, as the seal continued to open, a hole full of dark demonic light appeared. Billowing demonic aura loomed in the hole, slowly spreading in all directions. Ah, I'm finally out. After 900 years, I'm finally out. A terrifying demonic voice came from the depths of the dark hole, full of a strong sense of ecstasy. Then an illusory demonic shadow came out, raised its right hand, and touched the air as if it was feeling something. The next moment, the illusory demonic shadow raised its head and looked at Su Qin. So it's you, little monk. The illusory demonic shadow smiled, revealing a trace of cruelty. Since you dare to let me out, it seems that you're quite confident? The illusory demonic shadow looked at Su Qin with interest and said with pity, although I don't know why you have the Tathagata's will. But under the absolute gap in strength, you will know what true despair is. The illusory demonic shadow's words were full of strong confidence. The Tathagata's will was incredible, but the premise was that one had to have enough strength to activate it. You've entered grade 1 at such a young age, you do have potential, the illusory demonic shadow said while looking at Su Qin. However, the next moment, the illusory demonic shadow seemed to have discovered something, and its expression suddenly changed. No, you're not grade 1. You're Venerable Arhat? The illusory demonic shadow's pupils dilated, and its face was full of horror. Chapter 79. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. A huge wave of emotions surged in the Phantom's heart. How rare was the Venerable Arhat? Even with his talent, it took him 100 years to barely step into this realm. And this was because Toarahan spent a lot of effort to guide him and even used his blood essence to shape his body. His terrifying talent, coupled with the unique conditions, created the Phantom to reach the Arhat realm in 100 years. But what about Su Qin? The Phantom knew very well that this generation of Shaolin Temple had no Venerable Arhat. Since Toarahan passed away 900 years ago, the Shaolin Temple had never given birth to another Venerable Arhat. In other words, Su Qin became Venerable Arhat all by himself. Thinking of this, the Phantom couldn't help but feel cold all over. 10 years ago, when Su Qin was strengthening the seal, the Phantom was very sure that Su Qin's bone age was definitely not more than 30 years old. Now he was at most 40 years old. A 40-year-old Venerable Arhat? The Phantom only felt his scalp go numb. Now he had been suppressed for 900 years, abandoned his body, and struggled at death's door in the form of a demonic will. His strength had plummeted by a lot. If Su Qin was still first grade, the Phantom was confident that he could deal with him. At the very least he could escape unscathed. But a venerable Arhat. Master, let's talk nicely. Since you let me out, there must be something you need me for. As long as you say it, I will definitely do it. The phantom didn't dare to continue to call himself this venerable. He wanted to temporarily surrender and save his life first. No need. Su Qin was too lazy to talk nonsense and moved his mind. Suddenly, a small square seal appeared in the void. This small seal was pitch black as if it came from the dark demon abyss. There were still traces of blood at the corners. It was the demon suppression seal. It was the last treasure Su Qin obtained from the demon-subduing tower of the Shaolin Temple. It was known as the nemesis of all demonic cultivators. Rumble. As soon as the devil-suppressing seal appeared, it continued to expand, covering more than half of the sky and slowly falling towards the illusory devil shadow. This is. Extreme fear appeared in the demonic illusion's eyes. As soon as the small seal appeared, the demonic figure felt its strength being suppressed by half. As the small seal grew larger and larger, the suppression also grew heavier and heavier. It was as if the world was collapsing. The demonic illusory shadow roared again and again, instantly using dozens of life-saving secret techniques in an attempt to stop the demon-suppressing seal's suppression. However, it was a pity. Against the devil-suppressing seal, all of the methods of the devil shadow were like a gentle breeze, unable to withstand a single blow. A moment later, under the suppression of the devil-suppressing seal, the illusory devil figure completely collapsed. Even the hole he walked out of was also crushed into powder by the devil-suppressing seal. This thing is convenient. Su Qin looked at the devil-suppressing seal that had returned to its original state and was quite satisfied. Although Su Qin could also deal with the devil Buddha without using the devil-suppressing seal, with this devil-suppressing seal, Su Qin didn't even need to lift his hand. Of course, the devil Buddha had been suppressed for 900 years and his strength was less than 1%, but the devil-suppressing seal's ability to restrain the world's devil Tao was also very exaggerated. After retracting the devil-suppressing seal, Su Qin returned to his original position and sat cross-legged. Since the devil Buddha had completely fallen, the sealing power of the Buddha's palm left in the forbidden area of the back mountain was naturally absorbed by Su Qin. Pure land in the palm? Su Qin slowly felt the sealing power, a thoughtful look on his face. 900 years ago, Tuo Arahan suppressed the devil Buddha with the third move of the Buddha's palm, pure land in the palm. At the same time, outside the forbidden area of the back mountain, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads widened their eyes in disbelief. The aura of the devil Buddha has disappeared. It's completely gone, the disciplinary court head whispered, full of disbelief. The other court heads, including Abbot Huiwen, had similar expressions. Just now, they felt a devil chi from the forbidden area of the back mountain from afar. This devil chi was the same as the aura of the true nature of the devil Buddha's successor more than a decade ago. The moment the devil chi appeared, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads' expressions changed greatly, because they realized that it was very likely that the devil Buddha had escaped from the seal. However, before Abbot Huiwen and the others could speak, the aura that symbolized the devil Buddha completely disappeared. This kind of disappearance was not the kind of disappearance that was suppressed back, but a complete annihilation, vanishing into thin air. The devil Buddha's calamity is completely resolved. The warrior monastery head was in disbelief. Since the birth of the devil Buddha 900 years ago, he almost destroyed the Shaolin Temple. Although he was finally suppressed by Tuo Arahan, the successor of the devil Buddha that appears once every 100 years has been consuming the Shaolin Temple like maggots. In this generation of the Shaolin Temple, there is not even a grade 1 great grandmaster, which has a lot to do with the successor of the devil Buddha. But now, if Abbot Huiwen and the court heads are right, the devil Buddha that was suppressed in the back mountain has completely disappeared. Once the devil Buddha disappears, the successor of the devil Buddha, who originated from the devil Buddha, will naturally not appear again. In other words, from today onwards, the Shaolin Temple no longer needs to go through a catastrophe every 100 years. It was the venerable who did it. Abbot Huiwen looked at the back mountain with awe in his eyes. The other court heads looked solemn and also looked at the back mountain with great respect. They can't remember how many times Su Qin has helped the Shaolin Temple. Without Su Qin, the Shaolin Temple would have been destroyed long ago. Su Qin has saved the Shaolin Temple many times, and now he has helped the Shaolin Temple solve the problem of the devil Buddha. For the Shaolin Temple, how can Abbot Huiwen and the court heads not be in awe? Back mountain forbidden area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. For Abbot Huiwen and the court heads, and even for the entire Shaolin Temple, he has completely solved the problem of the devil Buddha. But in Su Qin's eyes, it was just a small matter. It was nothing at all. Even Su Qin felt a little bored. The Devil Buddha, who had been sealed and suppressed for 900 years, didn't give Su Qin any pressure at all. Su Qin didn't even move his hand and solved it with the demon suppression seal. Next, Su Qin returned to his usual peaceful life. Except for signing in every day and occasionally giving advice to Jianghu, Su Qin was basically cultivating. It has to be said that with the 1,000-year Bodhi heart, Su Qin's comprehension of heaven and earth has improved by leaps and bounds. Coupled with the past Amitabha Sutra's refinement of heaven and earth's essence qi and the sufficient supply of lustrous golden core, Su Qin's cultivation has grown so fast that it is almost approaching the speed of the 9th grade martial Tao. Time passed slowly. A year passed in the blink of an eye. On this day, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. Finally, the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer. Su Qin smiled. Chapter 80. Arhat level of cultivation is really difficult. It took me a year to reach the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer. Su Qin sighed softly, his expression slightly emotional. At this moment, Su Qin's true essence was like a river, constantly surging in his body, and his qi and blood were like an endless ocean. At this level of martial Tao, it was completely out of the scope of human beings. It was easy to destroy Hui City. Since I'm at the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer, I can consider breaking through. Su Qin thought silently. Arhat had 9 layers of heaven, and the gap between each layer was far greater than the 9 grades of martial Tao. But there's no rush, take it slow. I'll wait for a while before breaking through. Su Qin's thoughts flew, and he did not choose to break through rashly. Compared to the cultivation of the 9 grades of martial Tao, Arhat level involves the control of the power of heaven and earth, and needs to be more cautious. When he was at the 9th grade of martial Tao, even if there was a problem in cultivation, Su Qin could rely on his strong body to withstand it. But the cultivation of Arhat level, if something went wrong, the impact on Su Qin would be great. In this case, even if Su Qin thought that he was at the peak of the 2nd heavenly layer, he still needed some time to recuperate and adjust his state. Anyway, Su Qin was different from those old immortals who were close to the end of the Shouyuan. He still had more than 700 years and he was not in a hurry. 3 months later, Su Qin had adjusted his state to the best. I can break through. Su Qin sat cross-legged in the forbidden area of the back mountain. In an instant, the true essence was running according to the past Amitabha Sutra. Walala. The whole forbidden area of the back mountain once again set off a storm of qi of heaven and earth, and continued to spread in all directions. Suddenly, a storm of qi of heaven and earth appeared again in the sky above the Shaolin Temple. However, the disciples of the Shaolin Temple were obviously used to it and did not make a fuss for the first time. After all, in the past few years, there would be a phenomenon every once in a while. Even the timid disciples were not surprised. The Venerable One has broken through again. No matter how numb the court heads were, there was still a trace of shock in their hearts. Didn't the ancient books of the Shaolin Temple record that the cultivation of the Venerable Arhat was as difficult as ascending to heaven? Why was it that when it came to Su Qin, breaking through seemed as easy as eating and drinking? Back mountain forbidden area. As the boundless heaven-earth essence qi surged towards Su Qin, one glazed golden core after another was stuffed into Su Qin's mouth like jelly beans. Su Qin's breakthrough was also coming to an end. A moment later. 3rd layer of heaven, I finally succeeded. Su Qin opened his eyes, a trace of joy appearing on his face. The breakthrough this time was still the same as before. There weren't any great waves and there weren't any accidents. This feeling of power, Su Qin took a deep breath. After reaching the peak of the 2nd celestial layer, his strength was more than twice as strong as when he first entered the 2nd celestial layer. Su Qin could clearly feel the huge power in his body, as if it could break the void in front of him. Of course, Su Qin knew in his heart that this was an illusion after the surge of power. Not to mention the 3rd celestial layer Arhat, even the invincible 9th celestial layer Arhat couldn't break through the void. After breaking through and stepping into the 3rd celestial layer Arhat, Su Qin didn't have any complacency. He was still addicted to cultivation day after day. During this period, Abbot Huiwen officially announced that Jianghu was this generation's Buddha of the Shaolin Temple. Regarding this title, no one in the younger generation of the Shaolin Temple had any objection. Over the years, they had watched Jianghu, step by step, become a martial artist in the middle realm. Naturally, they were convinced. One must know that even the Zhen generation, which was one generation higher than the Xian generation, was mostly hovering in the lower realm, let alone this Xian generation. Except for Xianku, the other disciples of the Xian generation were basically between the 9th and 8th grade. Not to mention the middle realm, there wasn't even a 7th grade. In addition, Xianku often received guidance from the Venerable in the Back Mountains Forbidden Area. In the entire Shaolin Temple, no one thought that Xianku was not worthy of being the Shaolin Temple's Buddha. On this day, Xianku came to the Back Mountains Forbidden Area and asked to see Su Qin. Venerable. This disciple is preparing to go down the mountain and enter the world in a month. Xianku stood respectfully in front of Su Qin and said in a low voice, "Go down the mountain and enter the world?" Su Qin looked at Xianku, with a smile on his face. "Yes." Xianku said seriously, "It is recorded in the Buddhist scriptures that there are great temptations and great risks in the secular world, but only by experiencing the secular world can one cross the sea of suffering and reach the other side. This is your business. As long as you decide to do it, then do it." Su Qin shook his head and said indifferently. In fact, even if Xianku did not plan to go down the mountain and enter the world now in a few years, Su Qin would let him go down the mountain. What did the Shaolin Temple rely on as a martial arts sect in the world? Buddhist scriptures? Buddhism? Don't joke. The Shaolin Temple stood tall in the world and was the head of the 4 Buddhist temples. It had always relied on strength. Without strength, the Shaolin Temple would have been destroyed many times over. If you want to improve your strength, you can't just immerse yourself in hard work. More importantly, you have to go down the mountain and travel and verify with the martial artists in the world. This was also the reason why the Shaolin Temple sent disciples down the mountain every generation. One was to promote the reputation of the Shaolin Temple, and the other was to train the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. It was not only the Shaolin Temple but also the major sects in the world. For example, thousands of years ago, the youngest disciple of perfected Jianghu of the Wudong Mountain went down the mountain and challenged the heroes of the world. "Thank you, Venerable One." Xianku heard that Su Qin had no objections and quickly replied, "You may leave." Su Qin waved his hand and said, "Yes." Xianku immediately left the forbidden area in the back mountain respectfully. Late at night, the full moon hung high in the sky. The sign in opportunity has refreshed. Su Qin's figure flashed and appeared outside the Bodhi court. The Bodhi court was the place where the Shaolin Temple's pills were produced. It could be said to be one of the most important places in the Shaolin Temple. There were a large number of patrolling monks guarding it 24 hours a day. However, with Su Qin's strength, even if he walked in front of these patrolling monks, they wouldn't be able to notice him. System, sign in. Su Qin stood in front of the Bodhi court and said in his heart, "Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill." 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill? Su Qin's eyes lit up. The 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was the same as the glazed golden core. It was a sacred pill on the level of Arhat. However, the medicinal power of the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was several times that of the glazed golden core. If the glazed golden core was like a slow stream, then the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill was like a surging river. This was also the reason why Su Qin had been taking the glazed golden core all these years and not the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill. This was because Su Qin's previous physical body couldn't withstand the violent medicinal power of the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill. Now that I have stepped into the 3rd heavenly layer, can I try to take the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill? This thought flashed through Su Qin's mind. Chapter 81. Outside the Bodhi court. Su Qin's mind was in turmoil. Forget it. For now, the glazed golden pill is the most suitable for me. If I take the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill rashly, I might be able to absorb it, but I will definitely waste a large portion of its medicinal properties. It's not worth it. Su Qin shook his head. After all, he had less 9 Revolutions Whirling Pills than glazed golden pills. He had less than 500 pills in total. He had to use them sparingly. According to the ancient records in the Shaolin Temple, compared to Arhat's 1st to 3rd heaven, the 4th heaven will undergo some kind of qualitative change. It won't be too late to take the 9 Revolutions Whirling Pill then. Su Qin was in a good mood. He turned around and returned to the forbidden area in the back mountain. Time passed slowly. A month later. Before Xianku left the mountain and entered the world, he came to the forbidden area in the back mountain to bid farewell to Su Qin. "Venerable One, I'm leaving today." Xianku looked a little disappointed. Although he had been prepared for this, it was not until now that he realized how lively and lovely the plants and trees in the Shaolin Temple were. However, Entering the world to cultivate was something Jianghu had to do as the arhat of the Shaolin Temple. Perhaps other disciples could find excuses, but Jianghu could not avoid it. I've taught you for so many years. Let me give you a small gift before you leave. Su Qin sat cross-legged, raised his right hand, and took out an exquisite wooden sword the size of a palm. The wooden sword was very ordinary. It seemed to be carved from the most common wood in the Shaolin Temple. Thank you, Venerable One. Jianghu liked the wooden sword very much. He wore it around his neck and hung it in front of his chest. You may leave. Su Qin waved his hand. Yes. Jianghu respectfully left the forbidden area in the back mountain. It's been so many years. Su Qin felt a little emotional. The little acolyte in his teens was now ready to leave the mountain and enter the world. With that wooden sword, there shouldn't be any danger. Su Qin thought casually. The palm-sized wooden sword that Su Qin gave to Jianghu was naturally carved by him casually. However, Su Qin had left behind a strand of sword intent within the wooden sword. That sword intent was formed with the Dharma sword art as the foundation. Once Jianghu was in danger of death, this sword intent would be activated. And with Su Qin's current strength, if the sword intent in the wooden sword is really stimulated, even if he can't kill a legend, he can kill a grade 1 great grandmaster. This was also a life-saving measure that Su Qin had left for Jianghu. After all, Jianghu had entered the secular world to cultivate, not to die. Even if they really encountered a life-and-death crisis, they couldn't really let Jianghu die. However, Su Qin didn't think that Jianghu's life would be in danger. The Shaolin Temple is a great sect, and Jianghu is the current Buddha. Once he really leaves the mountain and enters the world, the various sects and forces will more or less give him some face. Even if they don't have a good impression of the Shaolin Temple, it is impossible for them to kill Jianghu. After all, what's the point of killing Jianghu? In addition to completely angering a great sect like the Shaolin Temple, what other benefits can there be? After Jianghu left the back mountain, he went straight out of the Shaolin Temple. Outside the Shaolin Temple, the sky was high and the ground was wide. Jianghu walked all the way, and when he encountered injustice, he saved people, and when he encountered people who died unjustly, he chanted sutras. After a period of time, Jianghu also met many disciples of other sects in the Jianghu. These disciples were basically the same as Jianghu. They entered the world to temper themselves and prove themselves. Among them was Zhang Xiao, the youngest disciple of perfected Zhang of the Wudang sect. It was said that Zhang Xiao finished the Tai Chi mental path on Wudang Mountain before he was 10 years old, and directly alarmed perfected Zhang, who had been in seclusion for many years. Zhang Xiao had entered the world a few years earlier than Jianghu. He had already been in the Jianghu for a while and had even earned the title of Little Perfected Master. Other than Zhang Xiao, there were also disciples of other great sects in the Jianghu. These disciples all came from the righteous sects, and what they did in the world was basically chivalrous. Little monk, I heard that an arhat appeared in the Shaolin Temple. Is it true? Zhang Xiao, who was wearing a Taoist robe, asked in boredom. He had always been carefree and unrestrained. Other than perfected Zhang, he was not afraid of anyone. Namo Amit Ba. Jianghu put his palms together and did not answer. Before entering the world, Abbot Huiwen had told Jianghu not to reveal any information about Su Qin. Zhang Xiao stopped teasing Jianghu. A girl next to him glared at Zhang Xiao and said unhappily, Lu Rumei, why are you speaking up for the little monk? Do you like him? Zhang Xiao teased. You. The girl named Lu Rumei drew her long sword and slashed at Zhang Xiao. A faint sword chi swept past. Zhang Xiao's body suddenly flashed and he took a few steps back. You crazy woman, you really dare to attack? When the others saw this scene, not only did they not come forward to mediate, but they also watched the show. They were all disciples of the righteous sects, and naturally knew when to stop. Whether it was Zhang Xiao or Lu Rumei, they stopped after testing the waters a little. They would not really fight. At the same time, inside a villa, several silhouettes stood there quietly. These figures were obviously powerful martial artists, especially the leader, a man with a hooked nose. His aura was surging and enveloping the surroundings. He was a grade 1 great grandmaster. Villa Lord, we have investigated clearly. Wudang Mountain's Taoist Zhang's pro-disciple Zhang Xiao will pass by here tomorrow. At this time, a man in black walked in and knelt down in front of the hooked-nosed man. Is this true? The hooked-nosed man's eyes lit up and he immediately asked. According to the route, unless they go back the way they came, they will inevitably pass by here. The man in black said without hesitation. That's good. That's good. The hook-nosed man laughed wildly, and his expression became colder and colder. Taoist Jiang, 30 years ago you killed my son, causing my bloodline to end. Now, I will kill your youngest disciple as a sacrifice to my son's soul in heaven. The hook-nosed man said word by word. The rest of the people present immediately lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at the hook-nosed man. Villa Lord, what if we kill Zhang Xiao and provoke Taoist Jiang to come out for revenge? A figure standing next to the hook-nosed man asked. Ha! The hook-nosed man shook his head. Don't worry, if it was somewhere else there would be too many people and I wouldn't dare to kill Zhang Xiao. But here, when the hook-nosed man said this, a smile appeared on his face. If we kill Zhang Xiao here, no one will know. The hook-nosed man's face was full of confidence. With his strength as a grade 1 great grandmaster, if he wanted to kill Zhang Xiao, he would have done so long ago. The reason why he waited until now was to wait for a foolproof opportunity. And now the opportunity had finally arrived. Chapter 82. The next day, Jianghu and the disciples of the other sects walked through a wasteland and stopped in front of a villa. Let's go in and rest for a while. Someone couldn't help but suggest. Most of them were martial artists in the middle realm. Although they had internal strength to protect their bodies, it was impossible for them to really go without sleep. Okay. Zhang Xiao glanced at the villa and nodded in agreement after confirming that there was no problem. Wait a minute. At this time Jianghu suddenly spoke. Let's not rest here. Jianghu was silent for a while and said. When Jianghu looked at this villa just now, he always had an inexplicable feeling of fear. Although Jianghu didn't know why, he also realized that this was a warning from his Buddha's heart. Not resting here? Zhang Xiao was slightly taken aback and looked at Jianghu, frowning. What do you mean? I don't know, I just feel that this villa is very dangerous. Jianghu shook his head and explained. Regarding the warning from the Buddha's heart, it was a mystery. He didn't know how to explain it, so he could only say what he felt. Dangerous? Zhang Xiao looked back at the villa again. In that case, let's not stop and leave directly. Zhang Xiao thought for a while and immediately said. When the others heard this, although they were a little dissatisfied, they didn't say anything. 4 martial artists like them, even if they were a little tired, they could still support themselves. However, just when Jianghu and others were about to leave, a gloomy voice suddenly sounded. Hee, since you're here, did you ask me if you want to leave? A man with an aquiline nose slowly walked over. The moment the aquiline-nosed man appeared, dozens of men in black quietly surrounded Jianghu and others. Trouble. Zhang Xiao looked dignified. At this moment, how could he not know that his group had fallen into a trap? May I ask who you are? My master is Wudong Taoist Jiang. Zhang Xiao reported his name without hesitation. The aquiline-nosed man not far away gave Zhang Xiao an extremely dangerous feeling. Although Zhang Xiao did not know how strong the hook-nosed man was, it was obvious that he was far stronger than him. Under such circumstances, Zhang Xiao naturally wouldn't think of challenging them. He directly reported his background, which was more direct than anything else. The others heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. In their opinion, Immortal Zhang of Wudong Mountain was famous all over the world. Once the other party knew that they were related to Immortal Zhang, they would definitely let them go. However, when the hook-nosed man heard the words Taoist Zhang, not only did he not show any fear, he even laughed heartily. Taoist Zhang? The one I killed was Taoist Zhang's disciple. The hook-nosed man laughed wildly. Men, take them down. Immediately, dozens of men in black rushed up without hesitation. Suddenly, a Lao Dao priest in a Taoist robe appeared and grabbed Zhang Zhao's shoulder, trying to escape. Martial uncle? Why are you here? When Zhang Xiao saw the Lao Dao officer, he was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. The Lao Dao officer was his martial uncle, a second-level supreme power master of Wudong Mountain. Zhang Xiao himself didn't expect to see his martial uncle here. Ah, I found you long ago. The hook-nosed man not far away sneered, raised his right hand and pressed toward the Lao Dao officer. Buzz. A powerful force pierced through the air and landed on the old Taoist's body. Puff. The Lao Dao officer's face immediately turned red and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He took a few steps back and almost sat on the ground. You should be Zhang Zhao's protector, right? The hook-nosed man looked at the Lao Dao officer and said slowly. With Zhang Zhao's identity, how could there be no one to protect him when he went down the mountain? The hook-nosed man didn't make a move just now because he was waiting for these people to come out. And you, all of you, come out. The hook-nosed man turned his eyes and looked at the others. Hey, may I know who you are? If I remember correctly, we don't know you? One after another, figures came out from the dark and looked at the hook-nosed man and asked in a deep voice. Indeed, I don't know you. The hook-nosed man's face showed a trace of coldness. But since you are here, then go to hell. In an instant, the aura of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster erupted. The expressions of the upper realm martial artists who were hiding in the dark to protect their disciples changed greatly. They flew out one after another and fell to the ground. Can't even withstand a single blow. The hook-nosed man smiled contemptuously. With his strength as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, suppressing these protectors was as simple as drinking water and eating. Seeing this scene, the disciples of the major sects suddenly felt their hands and feet go cold. Never in their wildest dreams would they have thought that their family's elders would not even be able to withstand a single blow from that hook-nosed man. You guys go. Run as far as you can. At this moment, the Lao Dao officer of Wudong Mountain suddenly shouted. When these words came out, everyone sobered up. Yes. The most important thing now is not to stand in place and wait, but to escape alive. Run. A trace of ridicule appeared on the hook-nosed man's face. How can these disciples, who are not even in the upper realm, escape from the hands of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster like him? Let's go. Zhang Xiao retreated to Shen Ku's side and quickly said, Martial Uncle just told me that he will use a secret technique to delay that person for a while. We should take advantage of this opportunity to escape. Then let's run together. Lu Rumei said with a trembling voice. She is of noble birth. When has she ever been frightened like this? It is already good that she can still stand at this moment. Okay. Shen Ku nodded. At this moment, although he was in crisis, Shen Ku felt unprecedentedly sober. Just as Shen Ku's voice fell, the aura of the Lao Dao officer of Wudong Mountain suddenly soared and he rushed towards the hook-nosed man. A secret technique? The hook-nosed man shook his head and took a step forward. He appeared beside the Lao Dao officer and suddenly punched. Boom. The Lao Dao officer's face suddenly turned as white as paper and he fell to the ground and fainted. Zhang Zhao's face was extremely ugly. Lu Rumei next to him was so scared that her legs trembled. They didn't expect that the Lao Dao officer who used a secret technique would still be so weak. I'm not going to play with you anymore. The hook-nosed man's face showed impatience. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed Zhang Xiao. Don't worry, you won't die so easily. I will let you taste the most extreme torture in the world before I send you down. The hook-nosed man looked at Zhang Xiao with eyes full of cruelty. It's over. Zhang Zhao's face was ashen. At this moment, his internal strength was sealed by the hook-nosed man. He couldn't even commit suicide. As for you, I have no enmity with you, but you saw something you shouldn't have seen. The hook-nosed man turned his gaze and looked at Shen Ku and the others. He raised his left hand and terrifying internal strength surged. He wanted to smash Shen Ku and the others into meat paste. What to do? What to do? The other disciples were already scared out of their wits and subconsciously ran in all directions. Even their elders in the upper realm died here, let alone them, the younger generation? Lu Rumei's face was also pale. She was so scared that she hid behind Shen Ku and closed her eyes, waiting for death. Little monk Shen Ku, I didn't expect that I would die with you. Lu Rumei muttered to herself. With death at hand, Lu Rumei suddenly felt relaxed. Namo Amitabha. If I don't go to hell, who will? Shen Ku stepped out and rushed towards the hook-nosed man. Although Shen Ku knew that he was going to die, but at this moment, between dying on his knees and dying standing, he obviously chose the latter. You little bald donkey, your courage is not bad. The hook-nosed man shook his head slightly and said, but it's a pity in front of me, courage is meaningless. The hook-nosed man's expression was cold. His left hand suddenly changed and a terrifying pressure quickly shrouded the field. Boom. Shen Ku felt as if he was struck by lightning, and his consciousness began to blur. Am I going to die? Scenes appeared in Shen Ku's mind, and finally stopped on Su Qin, who was sitting cross-legged in the back mountain. At last, I have seen the Venerable for the last time, just as Shen Ku calmly welcomed death. The palm-sized ordinary wooden sword that he had been wearing around his neck and hanging in front of his chest quietly began to vibrate. Gotcha. The wooden sword moved without wind, floating in the void, the tip of the sword pointed upwards, and slowly slashed towards the hook-nosed man. What is that? The hook-nosed man was a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster and immediately noticed the palm-sized wooden sword on Shen Ku's neck. Not good. The hook-nosed man felt a sense of life and death crisis in his heart and was about to retreat. However, At this time, the palm-sized wooden sword on Shen Ku's neck slashed down. Tear. An extremely illusory sword intent condensed from the void and slashed towards the hook-nosed man. No one can describe the sharpness of this sword. When this sword slashed out, it was as if even the void was cut in two. In the eyes of the hook-nosed man, he only saw a sword intent permeating the air. This sword intent crossed a distance of hundreds of meters in an instant and easily cut through the hook-nosed man's internal strength and directly cut him in two. The remaining sword intent swept through and penetrated the villa behind the hook-nosed man. Rumble. A smooth fracture suddenly appeared in the middle of the huge villa, and it continued to crack and spread. The entire villa was divided into two in an instant. This is. Everyone who saw all this was suddenly stunned and their minds went blank. Chapter 83. This. Many sect disciples who were preparing to flee were suddenly stunned when they saw this scene. They never dreamed that the hook-nosed man who easily suppressed many upper-realm martial artists would be cut in two so easily. That sword light just now. The Lao Dao cultivator of Wudong Mountain had just woken up from his coma when he saw the sword light that destroyed everything. Under that sword light, the void, heaven and earth's essence chi seemed to have been cut off. Everything in the world was overshadowed by that sword light. Even if senior brother personally made a move, it would be impossible for him to make such a move, the Lao Dao cultivator of Wudong Mountain muttered to himself. He looked lost as if he was still immersed in the sword light just now. I survived? Zhang Xiao fell to the ground with a thud, but he didn't feel any pain. Instead, his face was filled with ecstasy. Just now, the hatred of the hook-nosed man towards him was almost overflowing. Zhang Xiao didn't need to think to know that if he really fell into the hands of the other party, he would definitely beg for death. I was almost hit by that sword light just now. Zhang Xiao still had lingering fear. Unlike the others who saw the sword light from a distance, Zhang Xiao, who was caught in the hook-nosed man's hand just now, almost looked directly at the sword light coming towards him. According to the power displayed by the sword light just now, Zhang Xiao almost didn't need to think to know that once he was touched by the sword light, he would be no different from the hook-nosed man. The Manor Lord is dead? The hook-nosed man's men trembled and their faces were full of fear. Although they didn't know what happened to the sword light just now, the hook-nosed man really died in front of them. What should we do now? Several men in black looked at each other and suddenly wanted to retreat. Without the hook-nosed man, their strength was greatly reduced. Not to mention killing this group of sect disciples, if they were not careful they might even be killed. Let's go. These men in black made a decision almost instantly. If the hook-nosed man was still alive, they naturally wouldn't dare to disobey the orders of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. But now that the hook-nosed man's body was cold, if they didn't leave now, when would they? What if that sword light came again? Wouldn't all of them die here? Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Instantly, these black-clothed men disappeared one after another. At this moment, the disciples on the scene did not pay any attention to these black-clothed men. Their gazes were all fixed on Shen Ku. Shen Ku was also at a loss. He was just waiting for death. With the strength of the hook-nosed man, killing a middle-realm cultivator like him would be too easy. The Venerable One gave me a wooden sword? Shen Ku lowered his head and looked at the wooden sword still hanging around his neck. At this moment, the wooden sword had once again returned to its normal state. However, there were a few faintly discernible cracks on the edge of the wooden sword. Just when Shen Ku was in a daze, the other sect disciples walked over cautiously and stopped 10 meters away from Shen Ku. They looked at Shen Ku curiously as if they wanted to say something but didn't dare to. They are all heaven's chosen of their respective sects. Although they don't know what happened to the sword light just now, they obviously know that it has something to do with Shen Ku. Shen Ku, what happened just now? At this moment, Zhang Xiao, who had almost recovered, walked over and looked at Shen Ku and couldn't help but ask. As soon as these words came out, many sect disciples' eyes lit up and their ears pricked up. They wanted to hear what Shen Ku had to say. What happened? Shen Ku blinked and didn't know what to say. The wooden sword was given to him by the Venerable. That sword light just now could only be left in the wooden sword by the Venerable. Suddenly, a low voice sounded. Zhang Xiao, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. The Lao Dao disciple of Wudong Mountain quickly walked over and glared at Zhang Xiao. Then, under everyone's incredulous gaze, the Lao Dao disciple bowed deeply to Shen Ku. Thank you for your help. We of Wudong Mountain will remember it. If anything happens in the future, we will definitely repay you. The Lao Dao disciple's words came from the bottom of his heart. These words were not said to Jianghu, but to show goodwill to the existence who had just slashed out the sword light. The Lao Dao disciple was a second-grade supreme power master. In addition, he stayed with Jinren Zhang of Wudong Mountain all year round. Whether it was eyesight or other things, he was naturally far from a young disciple like Zhang Xiao. Based on the sword light just now, the Lao Dao disciple could conclude that the rumor that the real Arhat had walked out of the Shaolin Temple was probably true. Except for the high and mighty venerable Arhat, who could slash out such a powerful sword light. When the elders of the other sects saw this scene, their expressions changed slightly. They immediately bowed deeply to Jianghu, or to be precise, to the palm-sized exquisite wooden sword hanging around Jianghu's neck. Next, because of the hook-nosed man, many sect disciples were naturally not interested in continuing to travel around the world. Under the urging of their elders, they hurriedly returned, especially the Lao Dao disciple of Wudong Mountain. At this moment, how could he not know that the hook-nosed man came for Zhang Xiao? As for the disciples of the other sects, they were probably implicated by Wudong Mountain. Wudong Mountain is famous in the world, and Jinren Zhang is a peak grade 1 great grandmaster standing at the peak of the world. But now they almost failed. How could the Lao Dao disciple not be angry? Thinking of this, the Lao Dao disciple hurried back to Wudong Mountain with Zhang Xiao to investigate the origin of the hook-nosed man and why he had a grudge with Wudong Mountain. Shaolin Temple. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Just when the palm-sized exquisite wooden sword hanging around Jianghu's neck slashed out, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes and looked in a certain direction. The sword intent was activated? Su Qin's eyes were thoughtful. In the wooden sword he gave to Jianghu, there was a sword intent condensed from the Dharma sword technique. This sword intent was left by Su Qin. Even if it was far away, once it was activated, Su Qin could roughly feel it. Did he encounter a life and death crisis? Su Qin's expression remained unchanged, and he thought silently in his heart. Only when Jianghu encountered an unstoppable force will the sword intent in the wooden sword be stimulated. The crisis has passed, Su Qin carefully felt for a while and whispered to himself. The sword intent he left in the wooden sword could slash out 3 times. Now that Su Qin felt that the wooden sword was completely immersed after the first slash, he knew that Jianghu was almost safe at this moment. Otherwise, the remaining sword intent in the wooden sword would have continued to slash out the remaining 2 slashes instead of being immersed. Chapter 84. However, what on earth could cause a life and death crisis for Jianghu? Su Qin was slightly curious. Others may not know, but Su Qin, as the venerable Arhat, can see everything in the Shaolin Temple with his divine sense. Just when Jianghu left the Shaolin Temple and entered the cultivation world, the Dharma Court's head also disappeared from the Shaolin Temple. Obviously, the Dharma Court's head was ordered by Abbot Huiwen to secretly follow Jianghu to protect him. It should be known that in addition to Abbot Huiwen, a grade 1 great grandmaster, the Shaolin Temple only has 2 grade 2 great grandmasters. To be able to spare one to protect Jianghu is already extremely important. In fact, if it weren't for Abbot Huiwen being unable to leave and having to stay in the Shaolin Temple, he would have wanted to protect Jianghu, because Jianghu is too important to the Shaolin Temple. But even so, with a grade 2 great grandmaster protecting him in the dark, Jianghu still stimulated the sword intent in the wooden sword. Because of this, Su Qin was a little interested. However, although Su Qin was a little curious, he didn't care very much. What a pity. Whether it's the sword intent or divine sense, they all come from me. If one day I fall, these sword intent and divine sense will quickly dissipate as if they have no source. Su Qin sighed softly. This is also the reason why the Shaolin Temple has been in decline for thousands of years and many venerable Arhat have come out. Perhaps when Arhat was alive, the Shaolin Temple was famous in the world and no one dared to provoke them, but once venerable Arhat passed away, everything was different. No matter what happens, my own strength is still the most important thing, Su Qin sighed. If he was strong enough to have an immortal golden body like Buddha, indestructible for all eternity, then what in the world would be able to stop him? Thinking of this, Su Qin once again immersed himself in cultivation. Since entering the 3rd heaven, Su Qin's cultivation speed had obviously slowed down a little, but the slow here was equivalent to the 9th level of martial arts. Compared to the venerable Arhat of the Shaolin Temple or the martial arts legends of Jianghu, Su Qin's cultivation speed was still so fast that it was shocking. Whoosh. Suck. As Su Qin breathed in and out, the yuan qi of the entire back mountain shook along with his breathing. Time passed slowly. One day later in the Dharma court, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads gathered together again. Huiju sent a letter. Xianku was ambushed by a grade 1 great grandmaster on his journey. Abbot Huiwen looked at the court heads and said in a deep voice, Huiju is the Dharma court head and belongs to the Hui generation of disciples, along with Abbot Huiwen. The Dharma court head secretly followed Xianku out of the Shaolin temple. The other disciples may not know, but the court heads present are clear about it. This is also the result of the discussion between the court heads and Abbot Huiwen. Although the Shaolin Temple is a great sect and ordinary forces do not dare to provoke the Shaolin Temple, but it is better to be safe than sorry. With Xianku's potential coupled with Su Qin's guidance, he may not be able to achieve the Venerable Arhat, but he can at least reach the height of the Meng Yuan imperial teacher and Taoist Zhang in the future. How could the Shaolin Temple not have a backup plan for such a rare genius? However, the court heads had never expected that Xianku, who had entered the secular world to cultivate, would still encounter danger despite all their preparations. Grade 1 Great Grandmaster? Which Grade 1 Great Grandmaster dared to kill the Shaolin Temple's son of Buddha? The warrior monastery head was furious and stood up abruptly. The other court heads also had ugly expressions. In their view, in the face of a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster's attack, Xianku should not have survived. After all, no matter how great one's potential is, it still takes time to accumulate. Don't worry, Xianku is fine. Abbot Huiwen glanced around and said, Fine. The court heads' eyes widened in disbelief. They couldn't figure out how Xianku, with his strength in the middle realm, managed to save his life from a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. Before the Venerable left, he gave Xianku a wooden sword. It was this wooden sword that released a shocking sword intent and killed the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. A smile appeared on Abbot Huiwen's face. Wooden sword. Killed a Great Grandmaster? The court heads looked at each other, the shock in their hearts could be imagined. They were very clear about Su Qin's strength. Not to mention a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, even a Grade 1 Great Perfection would be vulnerable in front of the Venerable. But what the court heads did not expect was that Su Qin only relied on a wooden sword to kill a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster from an unknown distance. Is he still human? Although the Venerable Arhat is invincible, a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster is not an ant. The Venerable is the reincarnation of Buddha. How can we peek into his methods? After a long while, the head of the disciplinary hall murmured in a low voice, his eyes filled with awe. It's time to sign in. Su Qin leisurely came to the scripture pavilion, his thoughts fluctuating. During this time, in order to make up for the consumption of the glazed golden core, Su Qin has been signing in at the Bodhi court and has not come to the scripture pavilion for a long time. System, sign in. Su Qin said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Obtained the array diagram Essence Gathering Holy Land. Array diagram? Essence Gathering Holy Land? Su Qin's eyes lit up, and he immediately understood what the sign-in thing was. It should be some kind of heaven and earth array. Su Qin thought silently. After entering the martial Tao realm of Venerable Arhat or legend, one can comprehend the heavens and earth and master the power of heaven and earth. Some Venerables Arhat have created some heaven and earth arrays. The effects of these heaven and earth arrays are different. Some are inclined towards concealment, some are inclined towards suppression, and some are inclined towards healing. For example, the demon-subduing tower of the Shaolin Temple and the stone gate of the place where Tuoyarahan died are all protected by heaven and earth arrays. In the past 20 years, Su Qin has also signed in dozens of heaven and earth array diagrams. Now this Essence Gathering Holy Land must also be some kind of heaven and earth array. Just as Su Qin was thinking, everything about the Essence Gathering Holy Land flooded his mind. After a while, Su Qin suddenly opened his eyes. I didn't expect it to be a heaven and earth array that gathers world's essence chi. Su Qin was very satisfied. This was the first time he obtained this kind of heaven and earth array. One must know that martial Tao cultivation under the upper realm doesn't rely on world's essence chi, but once one reaches the upper realm, one needs to use world's essence chi to cleanse the body. At this time, the importance of world's essence chi will be revealed. The richer the world's essence chi, the greater the benefits to martial artists. Even if an ordinary person stays in a place with rich world's essence chi for a long time, they will not get sick and their lifespan will be prolonged. Shaolin Temple is a great martial Tao sect in the world, and it has produced Venerable Arhat, so the place where it is located naturally has sufficient world's essence chi. However, this world's essence chi is more than enough for ordinary martial artists, but in the eyes of Venerable Arhat Su Qin, it is not enough. Chapter 85. Outside the Scripture Pavilion. Su Qin was constantly sensing the essence-gathering Holy Land array. However, if I want to arrange this array, I need 999 jade stones. Su Qin frowned slightly. No matter what kind of heaven and earth array it is, it needs a medium to arrange it, and the essence-gathering Holy Land is no exception. 999 jade stones. Su Qin thought for a while and prepared to let Abbot Huiwen gather these materials. The Shaolin Temple, as a great sect, has thousands of disciples. It is absolutely easy to find the 999 jade stones that Su Qin needs. Time passed slowly. Su Qin's task immediately attracted the attention of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. This is the first time Su Qin has ordered them to do something, so how can Abbot Huiwen and the others dare to slack off? On this day, Xianku finally returned to the Shaolin Temple. Xianku's return naturally caused some shock in the Shaolin Temple, including Abbot Huiwen. After the court heads met Xianku, they asked him to come to the Back Mountain Forbidden Area to see Su Qin. In the Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Greetings, Venerable. Xianku respectfully said to Su Qin. This time, if it were not for the wooden sword given by the Venerable, Xianku would have died in the hands of the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. It can be said that Su Qin not only taught Xianku the Tao, but also saved his life. Do you have any doubts? Su Qin just glanced at Xianku and said, maybe Abbot Huiwen and the court heads can't see anything, but Su Qin's divine sense can observe the details. Even if it is not as good as the Buddhist divine sense, it is not something that Xianku can hide. Venerable, Xianku hesitated for a while, then bowed his head and said, disciple does have doubts. During this time, Xianku has seen all kinds of things in the world, and while he was deeply enlightened, the doubts in his heart also became stronger. Tell me about it. Su Qin looked at Xianku again and said slowly, yes. Xianku took a deep breath, paused, and continued, Venerable One, when I entered the world this time, I realized that all living beings are doing it for profit. There are even some who would do anything to achieve their goals, and even commit atrocities. Disciple doesn't know whether this kind of behavior is right or wrong. If it is wrong, why no one can change it? Xianku raised his head and looked at Su Qin, his tone full of doubt. Right, or wrong? A smile appeared on Su Qin's face and he said, all kinds of things in the mortal world are mysteries, it is the law of the world, there is no right or wrong, just like wolves eating sheep and sheep eating grass. You are not involved, you are not a wolf and you are not a sheep. The reason why you insist on right or wrong is only because of your mind. Su Qin's words were like a bronze bell, every word shook Xianku. It was like a blow to the head, pulling him out of his doubts. There is no right or wrong. It is just a mind, Xianku. His eyes became brighter and brighter, as if he had seen through something, and his whole body suddenly became transparent. Thank you, Venerable One, for pointing this disciple out. Xianku once again bowed deeply to Su Qin and said respectfully, you may leave. Su Qin waved his hand and said, yes. Xianku bowed and left. Sigh, at such a young age, why do you have to think about philosophy? Su Qin shook his head. If it was an ordinary person, even those eminent monks, a holy monk, they may be stumped by Xianku. Even if they are not, it is impossible to give Xianku a clear answer. But who is Su Qin? He has lived 2 lives and all kinds of ideas about his previous life are deeply engraved in his mind. How can he be stumped by Xianku? However, after this there is no more karma in his heart, and he is expected to enter the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster realm before the age of 40. Su Qin thought and judged in his heart. A 40-year-old Grade 1 Great Grandmaster, although far from being comparable to Su Qin, but looking at the whole world, he is still a top genius. In the future, if he has enough opportunities, he can even touch the bottleneck of Arhat. Of course, even if everything goes well, it will take 100 or 200 years for Xianku to get close to the bottleneck of Arhat. And with Su Qin's current cultivation speed, in 100 or 200 years, even if he does not completely transcend the Arhat level, he will at least reach the invincible 9th heavenly layer of Arhat realm. I hope you can grow as much as possible before the Scripture Pavilion and the Bodhi Court are exhausted. Su Qin thought silently. Little sister should be doing well in Chang'an, right? Su Qin raised his head slightly, looking in the direction of Chang'an city, and suddenly thought. Since entering the Arhat realm, Su Qin quietly returned to Zhangzhou's Yan city once. However, when Su Qin arrived there, he learned that his family Su had moved to Chang'an. After Su Qin learned about this, he did not worry too much about the safety of his family Su. Chang'an city is under the control of the Emperor of Tang. With Prince Li Sheng, how could his family Su be in trouble? Besides, Li Sheng has now been conferred the title of Crown Prince by the Emperor of Tang. As long as the Emperor of Tang is alive, his family Su will be safe. In addition, his little sister is wearing the jade pendant Su Qin gave her, which contains a strand of Su Qin's divine sense. Through this strand of divine sense, even if Su Qin can't know what she has experienced, he can roughly judge his little sister's state. Divine sense is different from sword intent and saber intent. Whether it's sword intent or saber intent, they are but a strand of Su Qin's power, but divine sense is a strand of essence that Su Qin has separated from himself. To put it simply, if the sword intent in the wooden sword Su Qin gave to Jianghu were to erupt, Su Qin could only be sure that the sword intent had erupted. However, Su Qin did not know why the sword intent had erupted, or what kind of enemy Jianghu was facing. But divine sense is different. If the divine sense in Su Yueyun's jade pendant were to erupt, even if Su Qin is far away, he can roughly sense the situation on Su Yueyun's side. Over the years, through his connection with the jade pendant, Su Qin is very sure that Su Yueyun is very safe, both physically and mentally. I still have to cultivate. Outside the continent, in the depths of the endless ocean, there are still unknown martial arts legends. Even though my current strength has reached the third heaven, and I can dominate this continent, I am still not invincible in the entire world. There are still experts of the same level. Su Qin calmed down, swallowed a glazed golden elixir, slowly closed his eyes, and immersed himself in cultivation. At the same time, in Chang'an City, in a luxurious palace, song and dance celebrated the peace and harmony, and the guqin played. At the head of the palace sat a man in a brocade robe. At this moment, the man looked gloomy, obviously suppressing some kind of anger. A moment later, what does father mean? He actually made that bastard the crown prince. The luxurious man slammed his hand on the table, his anger soaring to the heavens. Chapter 86. As soon as the brocade-robed man finished speaking, all the singers who were performing and dancing knelt on the ground in fear, not daring to raise their heads. Prince Qin, be careful with your words. A middle-aged man who looked like a strategist hurried over and whispered. His Majesty personally issued an imperial edict to confer the title of Crown Prince, and then he sent eunuch Zhao to bring Prince Sheng to the East Palace. His Majesty is determined. The strategist quickly said, if Prince Chen's words reach His Majesty's ears and eunuch Zhao's ears, as soon as he said this, the brocade-robed man's face changed. He looked at the singers who knelt on the ground and dared not raise their heads, and his expression gradually calmed down and said, men, drag them away. Yes. Suddenly, dozens of soldiers in black armor walked out from the dark and dragged the terrified singers away. Then what should I do now? Watch that bastard sit on the throne? Prince Qin clenched his fists, his face full of unwillingness. Over the years, as the Emperor of Tang grew older and older, the conflict between him and the other princes grew bigger and bigger. But even so, Prince Qin was still willing to accept it, because he knew that he had hoped to sit on the throne. But now, with the Emperor of Tang's conferment, the crown prince had a master. How laughable was the competition between the princes. If it was another prince who was conferred the title of crown prince, even if Prince Qin was unwilling, he would not be filled with resentment like now. But Li Sheng, in Prince Qin's view, Li Sheng was just a bastard who jumped out from a corner. It was already a great blessing to enjoy the treatment of an imperial heir, and now he dared to touch the throne? Prince Qin, don't panic. The middle-aged man who looked like a strategist looked around and said in a low voice, it's still too early to talk about the throne. Oh? Prince Qin's eyes lit up and he stared at the strategist. What do you think? Prince Qin, His Majesty is old. Even with eunuch Zhao's protection, there are many things that cannot happen according to his wishes. The middle-aged man who looked like a strategist said meaningfully. Hearing this, Royal Highness Qin narrowed his eyes. You're right. Royal Highness Qin looked at his advisor with a smile on his face. Father, he's old. Shaolin Temple. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Su Qin sat cross-legged and looked at the thousands of top-grade jade stones in front of him. These top-grade jade stones were sparkling and translucent, priceless. If they were placed in the outside world, it would cause a commotion. However, at this moment, these jades were placed in front of Su Qin like stones. The Shaolin Temple is really efficient. Su Qin was quite satisfied. Yesterday he had instructed Abbot Huiwen to collect jades. Today these jades had appeared here, and the quantity was much more than the 999 jades. Since the jades are all here, let's start setting up the heaven and earth formation. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and everything about the essence gathering Holy Land formation slowly flowed into his mind. Although Su Qin was very familiar with the essence gathering Holy Land formation after the system's infusion, familiarity was familiarity. However, it was his first time setting up a formation, so he still had to be cautious. If something went wrong in the process, these jade stones would be wasted. Time passed. Su Qin embedded each jade stone in a special position in the back mountain forbidden area, and finally used his divine sense to pry the heaven and earth essence qi in a radius of tens of miles. This was the key to the heaven and earth formation. Whether it was the jades or other mediums, they were all just supplementary materials. The true determinant of whether the formation could be formed was whether the person setting up the formation had sufficient divine sense. Generally speaking, only Venerable Arhat or martial arts legend-level divine sense could pry the heaven and earth essence qi. 1. As Su Qin's divine sense continued to guide, the jades embedded in the back mountain forbidden area bloomed with a misty light. Then endless heaven and earth essence qi rushed in from all directions. Suddenly, 999 jades bloomed with a misty light again, constantly guiding the heaven and earth essence qi in a radius of tens of miles. Whoosh! Almost at a speed visible to the naked eye, the heaven and earth essence qi in the entire back mountain forbidden area condensed into a mist, constantly circling the back mountain and slowly spreading in all directions. At this moment, all the Shaolin Temple disciples opened their eyes wide and looked at the back mountain forbidden area subconsciously. "Look, there seems to be a mist in the back mountain," a Shaolin Temple disciple exclaimed and said loudly. Over the years, although there had been strange noises in the back mountain forbidden area, most of them were the gathering of heaven and earth essence qi and would soon disappear. But now there was a mist that lingered for a long time like a fairyland. This was the first time they had seen it. What happened? Why is there a mist in the back mountain? A disciple subconsciously approached the back mountain forbidden area and asked curiously. Wait, is there something wrong with this mist? A Shaolin Temple disciple subconsciously took a breath of the faint mist, and his face changed slightly. The mist he inhaled was only a trace of the infinitely diluted mist that floated out of the back mountain forbidden area. But even so, this Shaolin Temple disciple felt an icy cold aura permeating his body, which was very comfortable. I feel it too. This mist is good stuff. I feel that the injuries I suffered from cultivation are getting better. Could it be that this fog is really immortal qi? Many Shaolin Temple disciples were in disbelief and were discussing. At this moment, compared to the disciples' disbelief, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were even more shocked to the extreme. This mist, is it condensed from heaven and earth essence qi? The warrior monastery head was stunned and said with a trembling voice. They were at least martial artists in the upper realm. After experiencing the cleansing of heaven and earth essence qi, they naturally knew the benefits of heaven and earth essence qi to martial artists. The other court heads glanced at each other, and their faces were also full of shock. Why don't we go see the Venerable and ask what's going on? After a while, the disciplinary court head couldn't help but say. At this moment, the movement of the mist in the back mountain was too big. Even if they knew that Su Qin didn't want to be disturbed, they had to bite the bullet and go up. Back mountain forbidden area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. If the essence qi outside the back mountain was only condensed into mist, then here the mist was about to form a substance. In such an environment, Su Qin only felt that the true essence in his body was running a lot faster. No wonder many venerable Arhat and legends like to comprehend these heaven and earth great arrays. It turns out that there are such great benefits. Su Qin only felt that every piece of flesh in his body was cheering. Suddenly, at this moment, Su Qin's eyes moved and looked outside the back mountain forbidden area. They're here too? Su Qin's divine sense shrouded the area and naturally found Abbot Huiwen and the court head standing outside the back mountain forbidden area hesitantly, not knowing whether to come in or not. Come in. Just as Abbot Huiwen and the court heads looked at each other and stopped outside the back mountain forbidden area, a calm voice sounded in their ears. The Venerable has agreed to let us in. The warrior monastery's court head looked happy and carefully walked into the back mountain forbidden area. Abbot Huiwen and the other court heads followed closely behind. And as they continued to walk in, Abbot Huiwen and the others increasingly felt the extremely rich essence qi of heaven and earth. Finally, they walked into the depths of Buddha Mountain in the back mountain forbidden area and saw Su Qin sitting cross-legged, surrounded by white mist. As he breathed, it was long and profound, almost like a Buddha. Greetings, Venerable One. Abbot Huiwen and the others bowed. Chapter 87. Get up. With Su Qin's words, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads dared to straighten their backs a little, but even so, they still lowered their heads and did not dare to look directly at Su Qin. Venerable, I wonder about the mist in this back mountain? Abbot Huiwen carefully organized his words and asked tentatively. In Abbot Huiwen's heart, the young monk sitting cross-legged in front of him was no longer a disciple of the Shaolin Temple, but the Venerable Arhat, the reincarnation of Buddha, destined to break the limits of the world in the future. Mist? It's just a little thing I made. Su Qin didn't care. The mist, in Abbot Huiwen's eyes, was just a vision produced by the condensation of world's essence qi. It was not the same as the real mist at all. Little thing, the court heads looked at each other and felt as if they were dreaming. They had just quietly inhaled the mist outside the back mountain, so they could clearly perceive that the mist helped them. Especially the court head of Arhat, he spent most of his energy on external cultivation when he was young, which led to some internal injuries in his body. These internal injuries accumulated. Maybe nothing would happen now, but when the court head of Arhat's chi and blood really declined, it would really break out. The court head of Arhat also had a headache about this, but there was nothing he could do. These internal injuries were deep in the bone marrow. Unless he stepped into grade 1 and completed the transformation of his body, it would be difficult to get rid of them. But now, after inhaling a few breaths of the mist, the court head of Arhat felt that these internal injuries in his body were slowly getting better. Although there was still a long way to go before he fully recovered, at least it would not continue to deteriorate. However, for him, the mist was comparable to an elixir, but in Su Qin's mouth, it was just a little thing not worth mentioning. This made the court heads feel very emotional, and for a while they didn't know what to say. They were all martial artists in the upper realm, and they were exposed to world's essence qi every day. Of course, they recognized that the mist was condensed from world's essence qi. However, even though he recognized it when he actually saw it and even absorbed it into his body, he still felt incredulous. Since you're here, I have something to say. Su Qin glanced at Abbot Huiwen and the court heads and said lightly, every day some of the fog will spread to the outside of the back mountain. You can choose some disciples to absorb it. Once the heaven and earth elemental formation of the elemental gathering Holy Land was set up, it would attract the heaven and earth elemental qi within a radius of tens of miles at all times. The qi of heaven and earth was compressed by the heaven-earth formation and became solid. But there was still a small part of it that leaked out of the formation. That was the fog that the disciples of the Shaolin Temple saw. Compared to the true yuan qi of heaven and earth gathered by the essence gathering Pure Land, the mist was far inferior. It was on a completely different level. But for the Shaolin Temple's middle realm disciples and even the upper realm court heads, it had a great effect. Nourishing the body, improving cultivation, and so on. Su Qin reminded Abbot Huiwen and the others of this matter based on the principle of not wasting anything. Anyway, Su Qin didn't care about the mist. Even if he didn't say it, the mist would naturally dissipate into heaven and earth. Instead of that, it was better to help the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. However, what Su Qin didn't expect was what kind of monstrous waves his words set off in the hearts of Abbot Huiwen and the court heads. One must know that the mist was not like some pills that would disappear after eating it. According to their guess, the mist should be able to be produced continuously. After absorbing it today, it will still appear tomorrow. What does this mean? This means that this is an inexhaustible treasure. Thank you, Venerable. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads bowed deeply to Su Qin. At this moment, there was nothing but gratitude in their hearts. Go out. Su Qin opened his mouth and said. Now that the elemental gathering Holy Land formation had just been completed, before he had the time to settle down and experience it, Abbot Huiwen and the others came to find him. Now that he had explained everything, Su Qin naturally asked them to leave. Yes. Abbot Huiwen and the others respectfully left. What a pity. This kind of formation that gathers the qi of heaven and earth involves the operation of the qi of heaven and earth. Every once in a while, I have to personally maintain it. Otherwise, after 20 years at most, the effectiveness of the formation will continue to decline. After 100 years, it will completely become a useless formation. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. The heaven and earth formation that gathers the qi of heaven and earth was not the same as the heaven and earth formation that conceals or suppresses. The latter only needs to cover a very small area. In this small area, the fluctuations of heaven and earth are small and do not need to be constantly adjusted, so it can exist for a long time. especially the concealment-type heaven and earth formation, which can be maintained for almost 1,000 years. For example, the secret chamber where Tuo Arahan passed away was not discovered by Su Qin until 900 years later. And the formation can still avoid the detection of Su Qin's divine thought after 900 years. But the elemental gathering Holy Land formation is different. It involves the chi of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles. Such a large area of chi of heaven and earth will change almost immediately. And once the chi of heaven and earth changes, the elemental gathering Holy Land formation will naturally change accordingly, otherwise it will gradually lose its effectiveness. While thinking, Su Qin closed his eyes and immersed himself in cultivation. At this moment, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads walked out of the back mountain forbidden area. Abbot Huiwen stopped and looked back at the slowly spreading fog. Even if this fog can only last for 50 years, it can ensure the prosperity of the Shaolin Temple for 300 years. Abbot Huiwen sighed and said softly, 50 years? 300 years of prosperity? The other court heads were shocked and looked at Abbot Huiwen in disbelief. They had overestimated the influence of the fog on the Shaolin Temple, but from Abbot Huiwen's words, it seems that the importance of the fog is far beyond their imagination. You don't believe me? Abbot Huiwen glanced at the court heads, shook his head and continued, I have just estimated that if we cultivate under this fog in 10 years, the number of martial artists in the upper realm will double, and in 20 years at least 2 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters will be born. In 50 years the number of Great Grandmasters in our temple will reach 8 to 10. With so many Great Grandmasters, the number of powerhouses born in our temple will only increase. If this continues, I am afraid that 300 years of prosperity will not be enough. Abbot Huiwen said slowly. The other court heads were already dumbfounded by what they heard. Especially when they heard that in 50 years, the number of Grade 1 Great Grandmasters in the Shaolin Temple will reach 8 to 10. This is a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster. In today's world, I am afraid that only the various countries have such a number of Great Grandmasters, right? To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar Studies. Chapter 88. When Abbot Huiwen talked about the influence of the fog in the back mountain, the court heads were shocked. They instinctively questioned Abbot Huiwen in their hearts, but on second thought, it seems that Abbot Huiwen's words are very reasonable. With the fog in the back mountain 50 years later, as long as there are no major changes, the Shaolin Temple is very likely to produce 8 to 10 Grade 1 Great Grandmasters. Hurry back and arrange for the disciples to absorb the fog. Otherwise today's fog may dissipate. The Dharma court head glanced at the court heads who were still in shock and said. When these words came out, the court heads woke up from their daze. Not only do the disciples need to absorb the fog, but they also need the fog to nourish themselves. Especially the court heads of the Arhat court and the warrior monastery, who were originally at peak Grade 3, and now with the help of the fog, they can step into Grade 2 in one go. Thinking of this, everyone became excited. Back mountain forbidden area. Half a day later. Su Qin sat cross-legged, and the endless yuan qi mist poured into his body like a dragon. Bula, bula. Every time Su Qin breathed, it was like a certain mythical beast was breathing. The endless yuan qi mist faintly formed a vortex and was absorbed by him. The effect is good. At this time, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, looking satisfied. At this moment, the world's essence qi around him is almost 100 times more than the world's essence qi in other places. Su Qin can greatly improve his cultivation speed here. Coupled with the endless supply of glazed golden cores, to some extent, Su Qin's strength is improving every moment. However, it is more difficult than I thought to break through from the 3rd heavenly layer to the 4th heavenly layer. Su Qin frowned slightly. Even in this cultivation environment, Su Qin still couldn't see where the peak of the 3rd heavenly layer was, as if there was no upper limit to this realm. I'm still too weak. If I were Arhat of the 9th heaven, I would be able to cover an area of 1,000 miles or even 10,000 miles with my enormous divine sense. Then, the elemental energy of the world within a radius of 5,000 kilometers will be gathered here. That will most likely truly be comparable to an immortal's abode. Su Qin sighed. The essence gathering Holy Land formation was also divided into different levels. As for the lowest level ones, they could cover an area of several miles. Next, it would cover a radius of tens of miles, then hundreds of miles, thousands of miles and tens of thousands of miles. If a venerable who had just entered the realm of Arhat came here, he would only be able to gather the natural energies within a radius of a few miles. However, at this moment, Su Qin had already reached the third layer of the heavenly layer, and his spiritual sense was far superior to that of Arhat, who was at the first layer of the heavenly layer. Therefore, the essence-gathering holy land that he set up naturally reached the second level, covering an area of dozens of miles. It's a pity that the essence-gathering holy lands can't be stacked on top of each other. Otherwise, I would like to set up a few more. Su Qin shook his head. But it can be done now. At least, my cultivation speed is definitely much faster than that of the previous venerable Arhat of the Shaolin Temple. In fact, since ancient times, I'm afraid that no martial arts legend has ever had the same conditions as me. Su Qin nodded slightly. He wasn't dissatisfied. It should be known that throughout history, perhaps some martial arts legends had obtained a large formation similar to the pure land of essence gathering, that could gather the chi of heaven and earth. However, it was unlikely that any of them would be willing to continuously consume a precious elixir like the glazed golden pill. Not to mention that Su Qin also had the Sutra of the Past Amitabha, a supreme scripture that could almost endlessly refine the natural energies. Let's cultivate, don't bite off more than you can chew. Su Qin closed his eyes again and circulated the Sutra of the Past Amitabha in his body. Late at night. The full moon hung high in the sky. Su Qin stopped cultivating. Time to sign in. Su Qin walked out of the back mountain and came to the Sutra Pavilion. System, sign in. Su Qin said in his heart. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received the Pearl Demon Subduing Supreme Divine Art. Prompt, the Taoist connotation here is about to run out, and it will become a non-repeatable sign in place. 2 consecutive cold, mechanical sounds sounded in Su Qin's ears. Pearl Demon Subduing Supreme Divine Art? A non-repeatable sign in place? Su Qin raised his head and looked at the scripture pavilion, his thoughts inexplicably complicated. Since Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple for nearly 30 years, he had signed in front of the Sutra Pavilion countless times. But now, the Sutra Pavilion that had accompanied Su Qin for many years was finally exhausted by Su Qin. The Taoist connotation was exhausted and he could no longer sign in. Although the exhaustion of the Taoist connotation of the demon-subduing tower had already reminded Su Qin that even an ancient temple like the Shaolin Temple that had been passed down for thousands of years didn't have endless Taoist connotation. But when this day really came, Su Qin was still filled with emotions. The Taoist connotation of the Sutra Pavilion is gone, and the Bodhi Court is probably going to be gone soon. Su Qin thought silently in his heart. Although the Bodhi Court was an important place of the Shaolin Temple, in terms of Taoist connotation, it shouldn't have much more than the Sutra Pavilion. In addition, Su Qin wouldn't sign in the Sutra Pavilion in the future. All the sign-in opportunities would probably be used in the Bodhi Court. No matter how much Taoist connotation there was in the Bodhi Court, it couldn't withstand Su Qin coming once a day. When I can't sign in the Bodhi Court anymore, it's time to go out. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated. Although he had stayed in the Shaolin Temple for almost 30 years, he didn't feel any burden about leaving. The main reason was that Su Qin thought that he had left enough for the Shaolin Temple. Not only did he help Jianghu complete the Buddha's heart, but he also often gave him pointers, saving him from many detours. It was equivalent to cultivating a future grade 1 great perfection for the Shaolin Temple. In addition, Su Qin also left the essence-gathering Holy Land array in the back mountain forbidden area. This kind of array that gathers world's essence chi, even without Su Qin's maintenance, can last for 20 years. After 20 years, it will decline, and it won't be completely destroyed until 100 years later. This doesn't include Su Qin's many times secretly helping the Shaolin Temple solve countless life and death crises. The grievances have been settled. The karma has been settled. Just as Su Qin was thinking, bits and pieces of information about the Pearl Demon Subduing Supreme Divine Art poured into Su Qin's mind. After a while, Su Qin opened his eyes. Not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly. The Pearl Demon Subduing Supreme Divine Art is a pure offensive divine art. It can condense 24 pearls with one's own true essence to suppress all demons and monsters. More than 1,000 years ago, a certain Shaolin Venerable Arhat once used this divine art to kill a certain demon path legend. Although it is said that a legend is often not seen in several eras, whether it is a legend or Venerable Arhat, they both have a Shoyuan of 500 years, which is far longer than an era. Therefore, if one is lucky enough, one can often see several legends coexisting in the same era. Of course, if one is unlucky, it may be impossible for a legend to be born in several eras. Condense. Su Qin raised his right hand and condensed a pearl according to the operation method of the pearl demon subduing supreme divine art. This pearl spun in a circle, faintly revealing a palpitating aura. It's time to go back. Su Qin carefully sensed it and was quite satisfied. In terms of power, this divine art is probably in the top 200 divine arts that Su Qin has obtained in so many years. It is rare. To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar, Love, Literature, Learning. Chapter 89. Su Qin returned to the back mountain forbidden area. Although the descending demon pearl supreme divine art is a good divine art, Su Qin did not spend much effort on it. After all, Su Qin knows that no matter what divine art it is, it depends on one's own cultivation. Time passed slowly. Su Qin once again returned to his peaceful days. Sign in Cultivation Heaven and Earth and occasionally giving pointers to Jianghu. Of course, Su Qin only gave a little pointers to Jianghu, and did not choose the path for Jianghu to walk in the future. In martial Dao cultivation, especially when one reaches the grade 1 Great Grandmaster realm, those who are similar will live and those who are similar will die. Every grade 1 Great Grandmaster can only achieve their own transformation and become a peak grade 1 if they walk their own path. Jianghu has a Buddha's heart and is born intelligent. Even a grade 1 Great Perfection martial artist cannot affect him. But Su Qin is different. As a venerable arhat at the third heavenly layer, his every move will have an indelible impact on Jianghu. Perhaps these influences are good for Jianghu, but they may also be bad. Therefore, Su Qin simply let it go, and only give a few pointers when Jianghu has doubts. Everything else is left to develop. Just when Su Qin was immersed in cultivation again. Many disciples of the Shaolin Temple have also undergone significant changes. The back mountain is filled with fog, and every disciple who has been in the temple for more than 10 years can cultivate near the back mountain. Under the fog, even the martial artists in the middle realm and lower realm who have not been exposed to the world's essence chi can feel their body being nourished and gradually becoming stronger. On this day, patrolling monk Zhenji had just returned from cultivation near the back mountain when he saw several other disciples whispering about something. "What are you talking about?" Zhenji walked over and asked casually. At this moment, Zhenji was still amazed by the effect of the fog in the back mountain. As a disciple of the Zhen generation, Zhenji had been in the temple for decades. Naturally, he was qualified to practice in the forbidden area of the back mountain. At first, Zhenji didn't think much of it. He thought that the fog was useless. But with this period of cultivation, Zhenji could clearly feel the changes in his body. Zhenji could even faintly feel that his body's blood vitality had become vigorous once more. How unbelievable was this? One had to know that a martial artist's vitality would gradually increase from birth until it reached a peak and then fell back down. Perhaps it was because he practiced martial arts that his peak was extended for a period of time. However, if there were no other major breakthroughs, the decline of a martial artist's chi and blood would be irreversible after a period of peak. Originally, Zhenji was in such a situation. His chi and blood had already begun to decline. If there were no accidents, his strength would not improve at all in the future, and his achievements in this life would stop here. But now, Zhenji actually felt that his chi and blood were slightly flourishing. That mist, in Zhenji's mind, the fog that covered the sky and covered the earth appeared again. While Zhenji was deep in thought, the disciples who were whispering to each other quickly looked up at Zhenji and said, "Brother Zhenji. Brother Zhenji, we are talking about the venerable in the back mountain." A disciple looked around, lowered his voice and said in a respectful tone, "The venerable?" Zhenji frowned and looked at the disciples. "Is the venerable someone you can talk about?" "Brother Zhenji, we definitely don't mean to disrespect the venerable. We are just curious about what kind of person the venerable is," the disciple who spoke at the beginning quickly replied, for fear that Zhenji would think that he disrespected the venerable. "I don't think you dare." Zhenji glanced at the disciples and shook his head. "You don't have to think about what kind of person the venerable is. Just remember that the height of the venerable is no longer something that mortals like us can understand." At the same time, on Wudong Mountain, many Wudong Mountain disciples were gathered in front of an ancient hall. Many disciples had already gone down the mountain to travel the world, and some were even thousands of miles away from Wudong Mountain. But at this moment, these disciples were all standing here as if waiting for something. Is Master coming out of seclusion? A Wudong Mountain disciple's voice trembled as he looked at the ancient hall in the distance and whispered. "That's what Martial Uncle said." Zhang Xiao also stood next to him and replied in a low voice. Why did Master come out of seclusion? The second Wudong Mountain disciple looked at Zhang Shao and asked solemnly. Taoist Zhang could suppress the world for decades without leaving Wudong Mountain. This disciple couldn't understand why Taoist Zhang would announce his exit at this time. Zhang Shao thought for a while and tentatively said, "Some time ago I went down the mountain to travel the world, but I met an enemy of Wudong Mountain. This enemy was a grade 1 great grandmaster and wanted to kill me." Zhang Shao paused and continued, "Maybe Master knows about this and wants to come out of seclusion to avenge me?" "Impossible." The Wudong Mountain disciple who just spoke shook his head and said, "Master is in seclusion to break through the supreme Tao. Ordinary things can't disturb Master. If you die, Master may come out of seclusion to avenge you, but since you are not dead, there is still room for redemption. Master will at most order us to go down the mountain to find out the truth. It is impossible for him to come out personally." When these words came out, the other Wudong Mountain disciples immediately nodded. Although Taoist Zhang is protective, nothing happened to Zhang Shao. In this case, Taoist Zhang will definitely not come out of seclusion for this matter. While many Wudong Mountain disciples were waiting, click, the door of the ancient hall was quietly pushed open. A man in a Taoist robe with simple facial features slowly walked out. His skin was like jade, his eyes were clear and his age could not be seen. His movements were meticulous as if he had a strange charm. As soon as the Taoist priest came out, many Wudong Mountain disciples bowed and shouted, "Welcome back, Master. Welcome, Ancestor." Their voices shook the sky and spread for several miles. After a while, Taoist Zhang looked around and said, "Get up." This Taoist Zhang, who is known to suppress the world, did not have a trace of a martial artist's aura, as if he was an ordinary person. "Master, did you make a breakthrough?" A Wudong Mountain disciple couldn't help but ask. When the other disciples heard this, their expressions changed and they stared at Taoist Zhang closely. If Taoist Zhang really took the step in the legend, then Wudong Mountain would continue to suppress the world for 300 years. Breakthrough? Taoist Zhang smiled and shook his head. "How difficult is the mythical road? Even if I cultivate in seclusion for another 100 years, I won't be able to break through." "Then why did Master come out of seclusion this time?" The disciple who spoke at the beginning asked carefully. "Go down the mountain." Taoist Zhang raised his head and looked in the direction of the Shaolin Temple. He said softly, "Seeking Tao." To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar, Literature, Learning. Chapter 90. Down the Mountain. Seeking the Tao. Taoist Zhang's tone was flat, but when he said the word "seeking the Tao," there was a hint of expectation. Seeking the Tao? Many Wudong Mountain disciples looked at each other, not knowing what he meant. In their eyes, Taoist Zhang is the Tao of the world. Why would they need to go down the mountain to seek the Tao? Only Zhang Shao and the other disciples' expressions changed slightly, as if they thought of something. If there is a rumor that the Shaolin Temple has venerable arhat in the eyes of most martial artists, it is doubtful. But after experiencing the scene of going down the mountain, Zhang Shao and the other disciples knew that the Shaolin Temple does have venerable arhat. If it is not venerable arhat, who can kill a grade 1 great grandmaster from thousands of miles away with an ordinary wooden sword? This time, Taoist Zhang came out of seclusion because he heard the news. "This time if I don't return, Wudong Mountain will be closed for 20 years. Taoist Zhang looked into the distance and under the gaze of many Wudong Mountain disciples, he walked down the mountain step by step. Shaolin Temple. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were overjoyed. In just a few months, among the disciples cultivating near the back mountain, there were 3 who entered the upper realm. How rare is this? Even in a great sect like the Shaolin Temple, upper realm martial artists are enough to serve as court heads. If it was in the past, it would take at least 10 or 20 years for the Shaolin Temple to produce 3 upper realm martial artists. But now it was completed in a few months. How can this not make Abbot Huiwen and the court heads happy? The more martial artists there are in the upper realm, the more likely it is for a grade 2 and grade 1 great grandmaster to appear. Once the number of grade 2 and grade 1 great grandmasters reaches a certain number, it can in turn guide a large number of disciples with potential. This cycle will form and the Shaolin Temple will become stronger and stronger. Don't get carried away. These 3 upper realm disciples are the accumulation of our temple in the past years. They are all at peak grade 4 and are only 1 step away from the upper realm. Now, with the help of the fog, I was able to make a breakthrough. But it's impossible to give birth to an upper realm expert in such a short time. The head of the Dharma court said slowly. As soon as he said this, the other court heads who were immersed in joy immediately calmed down. Weiju is right. Abbot Huiwen nodded slightly. Although he was just as happy, he had also thought of this point. The reason why the Shaolin Temple was able to produce 3 upper realm experts in just a few months was mainly because of their previous accumulation. If he wanted to continue this smoothly, it would be as difficult as ascending the heavens. I should be breaking through soon. At this moment, the warrior monastery's head couldn't help but ask. You want to break through? Abbot Huiwen looked at the head of the warrior monastery in surprise. One must know that the head of the warrior monastery is a grade 3 martial artist. If he breaks through, he will enter grade 2. Today, in addition to Su Qin, the Shaolin Temple only has 1 grade 1 martial artist, Abbot Huiwen, and 2 grade 2 martial artists, including the head of the Dharma court. Now, if there is 1 more grade 2 martial artist in the warrior monastery, the foundation of the Shaolin Temple will naturally increase greatly. Just when Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were rejoicing, a disciple of the Shaolin Temple hurried in. Abbot, court head, someone is asking for an audience. The disciple of the Shaolin Temple panted. Asking for an audience? Abbot Huiwen frowned slightly. Who is it? He said he is from Wudong Mountain, surnamed Zhang. What? The court head's pupils shrank. Wudong Mountain? Surnamed Zhang? No matter how incredible it was, the court head subconsciously thought of Taoist Zhang on Wudong Mountain. Let's go out and have a look. Abbot Huiwen looked solemn and immediately got up and walked out of the Shaolin Temple. The other court heads looked at each other and immediately followed. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads arrived outside the Shaolin Temple. At this moment, a man wearing a Taoist robe with simple facial features was standing there quietly. Sure enough, it's Taoist Zhang. The court heads were shocked and still couldn't believe it. They didn't expect that Taoist Zhang of Wudong Mountain was standing outside the Shaolin Temple at this moment. Taoist Zhang. Abbot Huiwen took a breath, stepped forward and asked solemnly. Although he is a grade 1 great grandmaster in front of Taoist Zhang who has been a peak grade 1 for decades, he is still not enough. Taoist Zhang's eyes were calm and gentle, looking at Abbot Huiwen and slightly nodded. I don't know why Taoist Zhang came to the Shaolin Temple. Abbot Huiwen didn't beat around the bush and asked bluntly. When Lao Dao was young, he wandered the Jianghu and was fortunate enough to observe half of the 9 Yang divine art of your temple. Taoist Zhang did not answer Abbot Huiwen's question. Instead, he answered his own question. This half of the 9 Yang divine art is of great help to Lao Dao. Speaking of this, Taoist Zhang stretched out his right hand and took out a book. Lao Dao has nothing to repay you with, but this Tai Chi Heart Sutra. Tai Chi Heart Sutra. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were stunned. Tai Chi Heart Sutra is the work of Taoist Zhang. Even among the many disciples of Wudong Mountain, only a few have learned the Tai Chi Heart Sutra. But now, Taoist Zhang gave the Tai Chi Heart Sutra to the Shaolin Temple? Taoist Zhang, please take it back. Since the 9 Yang divine art has leaked to the Jianghu, it has nothing to do with the temple. Thinking quickly, Huiwen rejected the Tai Chi Heart Sutra without hesitation. Although the Tai Chi Heart Sutra is good, it walks the path of Taoism. Even if the Shaolin Temple got it, it would be useless. On the contrary, Taoist Zhang even gave the Tai Chi Heart Sutra. Obviously he was after something big. Taoist Zhang shook his head slightly and did not take back the Tai Chi Heart Sutra. Other than that, speaking of this, Taoist Zhang's eyes suddenly lit up. Lao Dao came here to seek an audience with the Venerable One of your temple? Seek an audience with the Venerable One? Abbot Huiwen's face changed. Taoist Zhang, I'm afraid you're late. The Venerable One has already said that he won't see anyone. Abbot Huiwen was silent for a while and said slowly. It's okay. Lao Dao can wait. Taoist Zhang was extremely carefree. Wait. Abbot Huiwen frowned. If Taoist Zhang, the master of Wudong, was still blocking the door, wouldn't it be a great loss of face for the Shaolin Temple? Taoist Zhang, please go back. Abbot Huiwen sighed softly. Since you know that the Venerable One is in charge of our temple, aren't you afraid that the Venerable One will attack you? Abbot Huiwen's words were a warning. Ask in the morning and you can die in the evening. A smile appeared on Taoist Zhang's face. As long as you let me see the Venerable One, Lao Dao's life is yours. Taoist Zhang's eyes were clear and his face was serious. This? Abbot Huiwen looked at Taoist Zhang with a solemn expression. In that case, the Shaolin Temple can only ask for advice from Taoist Zhang's Tai Chi path. Abbot Huiwen slowly channeled his inner force and looked directly at Taoist Zhang. Taoist Zhang wanted to see the Venerable One, but with the Venerable One's status, who could see him just because they wanted to? If anyone could see the Venerable One, where would the Venerable One's face be? Where would the Shaolin Temple's face be? With the Venerable One's kindness to the Shaolin Temple, even if Abbot Huiwen knew that he was far from being a match for Taoist Jiang, he would still try his best to stop him. When the other court heads saw this scene, they also channeled their inner force secretly, ready to attack at any time. Just when Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were at daggers drawn, a sigh of relief came. A sorrowful sigh could be heard, sounding both benevolent and boundless. Heaven and earth were drawn out and time passed quickly. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were shocked and subconsciously looked in the direction of the back mountain. Taoist Jiang did the same. He raised his head slightly and looked at the back mountain. However, when Taoist Jiang looked, he saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. The back mountain, which was originally calm and serene, suddenly became tall, filling up his entire field of vision. At the highest point of all vision, a figure sitting cross-legged appeared. This figure was like the Buddha in the center of the Pure Land, sacred, compassionate, solemn, and pure. Only I was supreme. That is? Taoist Jiang's mind was shaken. He only felt that his vision began to blur, and his thoughts kept falling. To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar, Lu, Wenxue. Chapter 91. The light of Buddha lingered, spreading in all directions. At this moment, Taoist Jiang felt as insignificant as an ant, looking up at an all-powerful Buddha. Supreme. Majestic. Unrivaled. Plop. Taoist Jiang's thoughts fell into darkness, and he fell to the ground with a plop. Venerable One. Thank you for your help, Venerable One. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads barely recovered from the shock and bowed deeply in the direction of the mountain. After a while, all the visions gradually dissipated. Venerable One, the strength of the Venerable One is getting more and more unimaginable. Abbot Huiwen sighed and said with emotion. So far, Abbot Huiwen has seen Su Qin make a move twice. The first time was when the Demon Lord attacked the Shaolin Temple, and the second time was when Taoist Jiang asked for an audience. If the first time Su Qin made a move, Abbot Huiwen felt that it was as vast as the heavens and earth, suppressing everything. But now, Abbot Huiwen felt as if it was an endless void, embracing and containing everything. Although the heavens and earth were vast, they were ultimately limited, but the void was endless. Of course, Su Qin had made a move more than twice, such as breaking into the Dharma court to save Abbot Huiwen, and restoring the Buddha's heart for Xianku. But in Abbot Huiwen's view, these were not real moves. Yes, the court heads next to him nodded in agreement. The means of the Venerable One were indeed incredible. Ordinary martial artists, even if they were grade 1 great grandmasters or even peak grade 1 like Taoist Jiang, could fight against tens of thousands and dominate the world. They could barely accept it. However, Su Qin's Buddhist aura was pervasive and the vision was rampant. This was already the legendary ability of the gods and Buddhas. If it weren't for the Venerable One, we might not be Taoist Jiang's opponent, the warrior monastery's court head whispered. Although the Shaolin Temple's foundation had increased greatly, not only did it have 2 more level 2 martial artists, but it also had a level 1A holy monk like Abbot Huiwen. In addition, there were also thousands of Shaolin Temple disciples. However, if he wanted to rely on these to block Taoist Master Zhang, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens. With Zhenren Zhang's strength, once he used his full strength, the destructive power produced by his every move would definitely make people's hearts palpitate. The reason why a peak grade 1 great grandmaster can shake the world and surpass grade 1 great grandmasters is because of their absolute strength. Otherwise, why would the Devil Lord dare to attack Shaoshi Mountain and threaten to destroy the Shaolin Temple several years ago? The court heads looked at each other, rejoicing in their hearts. At this moment, the head of the commandment yard seemed to have discovered something and could not help but ask, "Abbot, how should we deal with Zhenren Zhang?" The head of the commandment yard had just finished speaking. The other court heads and Abbot Huiwen remembered and looked at Taoist Master Zhang, who had fallen to the ground. The Dharma court head braced himself and cautiously approached. He glanced at him and said, "He's not dead, he just fainted." The court heads looked at each other and suddenly felt that it was a bit tricky. Since the Venerable has shown mercy, let's send him back to Wudong Mountain. After a long time, Abbot Huiwen slowly said, "Yes, I agree." The other court heads heard this and nodded slightly. In their eyes, if Su Qin had the intention to kill, Taoist Master Zhang would have died long ago. How could he just be in a coma now? Since Taoist Master Zhang is not dead, it means that the Venerable has shown mercy. In this case, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads will naturally follow Su Qin's instructions. Let's do this. I will send Taoist Master Zhang back later. Abbot Huiwen made a decision immediately. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Taoist Master Zhang, Su Qin sat cross-legged and a trace of emotion flashed in the depths of his eyes. Once upon a time Taoist Master Zhang was a big shot that he could only look up to. Am I already so strong? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he silently thought in his heart. Taoist Master Zhang, who was once unattainable, couldn't even bear a trace of his aura at this moment. However, in terms of fighting strength, Taoist Master Zhang is stronger than the Demon Lord. Su Qin compared Taoist Master Zhang and the Demon Lord and came to the conclusion that Taoist Master Zhang was better. In fact, whether it is Taoist Master Zhang or the Demon Lord, they are both peak grade 1 great grandmasters who have transformed twice. In any era they are enough to be called dazzling. But unfortunately they met Su Qin. However, Taoist Master Zhang's Tao of Tai Chi is a bit interesting. If he has enough opportunities in the future, he may be able to undergo a third transformation and reach grade 1 great perfection. Su Qin speculated in his heart. Su Qin's evaluation of Taoist Master Zhang is already high enough. So far, Su Qin only thinks that Jianghu is likely to undergo a third transformation and enter the realm of grade 1 great perfection. This is also because Jianghu has a complete Buddha's heart and often receives guidance from Su Qin, the Venerable Arhat. Taoist Master Zhang can reach this step by himself, which is already a peerless talent. As for whether Taoist Master Zhang can go further, Su Qin can't judge. Every Venerable Arhat or legend has a different way of breaking through, and grasping the qi between heaven and earth is even more impossible to judge. Wudong Mountain. Taoist Master Zhang was not sent by the disciples of the Shaolin Temple. On the way, Taoist Master Zhang had already woken up from a coma. After a short silence, Taoist Master Zhang let the escorting disciples of the Shaolin Temple go back, and returned to Wudong Mountain alone. Along the way, Taoist Master Zhang's mind kept flashing the scenes he saw in the Shaolin Temple, especially the last moment of his memory, when he saw the figure of a real Buddha. Taoist Master Zhang returned to Wudong Mountain. When the disciples of Wudong Mountain saw Taoist Master Zhang, they were overjoyed and surrounded him, looking at Taoist Master Zhang with concern. Master, are you all right? A Wudong Mountain disciple couldn't help but ask. It's really that at this moment, Taoist Master Zhang's expression was a bit strange. His whole person was in a trance, as if he was still immersed in some kind of emotion. I'm fine. How could I not be fine? Taoist Master Zhang shook his head and smiled bitterly. This time, when he went down the mountain, nothing happened to him, not even a trace of injury, but only Taoist Master Zhang knew in his heart that he may not be able to get rid of the shadow of that godlike figure in his life. Master, what did you see in the Shaolin Temple? Zhang Xiao squeezed in front of Taoist Master Zhang and asked carefully. Before Taoist Master Zhang left, he only said that he wanted to go down the mountain to seek the Tao, which made the disciples of Wudong Mountain puzzled for a long time, but Zhang Xiao guessed that Taoist Master Zhang probably went to the Shaolin Temple to seek an audience with the Venerable. What did I see in the Shaolin Temple? Taoist Master Zhang repeated in a low voice, and a trace of ridicule appeared on his face. Lao Dao has always thought that even a real martial arts legend would need a few moves to defeat and kill me. But now, Taoist Master Zhang slowly raised his head and looked deeply in the direction of the Shaolin Temple. Lao Dao, I was a frog in a well. Chapter 92. Shaolin Temple. Back Mountain Forbidden Area. Su Qin sat cross-legged. The entire Back Mountain Forbidden Area was shrouded in white mist. This mist was the real, essence-gathering Holy Land array. For Su Qin it was nothing, but in the hearts of many disciples of the Shaolin Temple, it was tantamount to a holy land for cultivation. Finally, I'm close to the peak of the third heavenly layer. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and a trace of joy appeared on his face. After this period of day and night cultivation, Su Qin finally reached the peak of the third heavenly layer. It is said that the fourth heavenly layer after the third heavenly layer will have some kind of qualitative change. Su Qin stroked his chin, a thoughtful look on his face. In the 9 grades of martial Tao, every 3 grades is divided into the lower realm, middle realm, and upper realm. This division is not just a division of grades, but also because the martial artists in the upper realm and the martial artists in the middle realm and the martial artists in the lower realm have some kind of change. For example, below the upper realm, martial artists only need to polish their body and internal strength. But if you want to enter the upper realm, you need to let go of the barrier between the body and heaven and earth, and let the heaven and earth's essence chi wash the body. This step is very critical. Who knows how many fourth-grade martial artists have fallen because of this? But only in this way can you really enter the upper realm. The same is true for Arhat from the third heavenly layer to the fourth heavenly layer. I thought that it would take at least a few years to enter the peak of the third heavenly layer, but with the heaven and earth array gathering essence chi, as well as the glazed golden core plus the past Amitabha Sutra, refining essence chi, it's actually close so quickly. Su Qin's thoughts were fluctuating. He had to say that the essence gathering Holy Land array did help Su Qin a lot, at least it shortened his accumulation time. In that case, just directly enter the peak of the third heavenly layer. Su Qin made up his mind. Stepping into the peak of the third heaven was not a breakthrough. As long as Su Qin was cautious, there would not be any danger. In addition, Su Qin had the Millennium Bodhi heart protecting him at all times. Unless Su Qin was courting death, it was impossible for any accident to happen. Just as Su Qin was immersed in cultivation once again. Rumble. The boundless chi of heaven and earth in the entire back mountain began to gather towards him. After all, the origin chi of heaven and earth within a radius of dozens of miles had already been gathered in the back mountain after the origin gathering Holy Land's formation. Time passed slowly. Several days passed in the blink of an eye. In the past few days, Su Qin had been immersed in cultivation except for the daily check-ins where Su Qin would go out. As he continued to inhale and exhale yuan qi, the aura in Su Qin's body became more and more complete, as if it had merged with the surrounding void. Could something have happened to the Venerable One? Jianghu stood outside the back mountain and muttered to himself. Usually, Su Qin would occasionally give him some pointers. But during this period, Jianghu had not even seen Su Qin's face, let alone give him pointers. Jianghu did not care about pointers. What he was worried about was whether something had happened to the Venerable One. Although in Jianghu's eyes, Su Qin was no different from a real Buddha, who would have thought that an accident would happen before it happened. Just as Jianghu was hesitating about whether to go in, the entire back mountain forbidden area fell silent. Then the endless fog shrank and rushed into a certain location in the depths of the back mountain. This is. Jianghu was slightly stunned. As the Arhat of the Shaolin Temple, he naturally knew that the so-called fog was condensed from the chi of heaven and earth. According to what Jianghu knew, ever since the fog appeared outside the back mountain, there had never been a day where it disappeared completely. Could it be that something has really happened to the Venerable One? Jianghu's expression changed. At this moment, tap, 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 a series of light footsteps were heard. Jianghu looked up instinctively. He saw Su Qin walking outside step by step. Venerable One. Jianghu was overjoyed. He immediately walked to a spot not far away and bowed deeply. Rise. Su Qin did not even look at Jianghu as he said lightly. At this moment, the true essence in Su Qin's body was circulating endlessly as if there was no end to it. It kept rising and condensing. I finally reached the peak of level 3, Su Qin sighed softly in his heart and looked down at Jianghu. Do you have any doubts about your cultivation recently? Su Qin paused for a moment and continued, in the future if I'm not in the Shaolin Temple, you have to rely on yourself for everything. As soon as Su Qin said this, Jianghu's originally happy expression suddenly froze. Venerable One, are you going to leave the Shaolin Temple? Jianghu was silent for a while before he mustered up the courage to ask. Su Qin looked up at the sky and said slowly, of course. Can the Venerable One take me with you? Jianghu immediately said eagerly, I can do anything for the Venerable One. If I leave, why would you follow me? Su Qin shook his head and said slowly, I have my path to walk and you have yours to walk. Besides, it's not like we won't meet again. When you achieve Arhat in the future, you can come to me. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face as he looked at Jianghu. If Jianghu really has the opportunity and perseverance in the future to get rid of the fate of the previous holders of the Buddha's heart and step into the realm of Arhat, Su Qin doesn't mind accepting him as a disciple. Yes. Venerable One, I will work hard. Jianghu clenched his fists and said seriously. Seeing Jianghu's expression, Su Qin smiled and took a step forward, disappearing on the spot. When Su Qin appeared again, he was already in front of the Sutra Pavilion. Outside the Sutra Pavilion, many disciples of the Shaolin Temple were constantly entering and exiting, but they all, subconsciously, ignored Su Qin, as if Su Qin didn't exist at all. Su Qin quietly walked into the scripture depository pavilion. He walked around the first floor and muttered to himself, "System, sign in. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. You have received 9 revolutions whirling pill, *100. Prompt: the Dao accumulation here is about to run out, and it will become a place that cannot be repeatedly signed in." As expected, the Dao accumulation has been exhausted. Su Qin was silent in his heart. In fact, before signing in today, Su Qin vaguely realized that this was probably the last time he would sign in. In the Shaolin Temple, the Dao accumulation of the Sutra Pavilion and the Bodhi Court should not be much different. Now that the Dao accumulation of the Sutra Pavilion has been exhausted, even if the Bodhi Court still has some left, it won't last long. However, the last 109 revolutions whirling pills will definitely be able to compensate for the previous hundreds of sign-in rewards. Su Qin's thoughts turned, and his mind entered the system space. When he saw the extra 109 revolutions whirling pills in the corner, his mood suddenly became better. One must know that even with Su Qin's savings in the past 30 years, he only has about 609 revolutions whirling pills now, and this was saved by him scrimping and saving. Now that there are suddenly 100 more pills, Su Qin is naturally in a good mood. Chapter 93. Not bad, not bad. 109 revolutions whirling pills, even if I eat one every day, it will be enough for me to use for half a year. Su Qin nodded slightly. The medicinal power of the 9 revolutions whirling pill is even stronger than the glazed golden core. Even the current Su Qin needs 10 days to half a month to digest a complete 9 revolutions whirling pill. If he really takes it, these 109 revolutions whirling pills are enough for Su Qin to use for several years. It seems that in the scripture pavilion, the Bodhi Court, and the demon subduing tower, there is a high chance of getting good things in the last check-in. Su Qin's eyes were thoughtful. For example, the last check-in in the demon subduing tower allowed Su Qin to obtain the demon subduing seal, which can restrain all the demon path martial artists in the world. Even an existence like the Devil Buddha will be reduced to ashes under the suppression of the demon subduing seal. Among them, although the Devil Buddha has been suppressed for more than 900 years and his strength has been greatly reduced, the power of the demon subduing seal cannot be ignored. There is also the scripture pavilion. Su Qin's last check-in obtained the Pearl Demon Subduing Supreme Divine Art. This divine art is an offensive divine art. It can condense 24 pearls and suppress the enemy. It is enough to rank in the top 200 among the many divine arts obtained by Su Qin. It's time to leave. Su Qin continued to stay in the scripture pavilion for a while, then turned and returned to the back mountain forbidden area. Dharma Court. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were discussing Buddhist scriptures and martial arts. This has always been their habit. They will not be complacent. The warrior monastery's court head was even more delighted. Yesterday he just broke through the bottleneck and officially entered the second-grade Grandmaster realm. Now our Shaolin Temple has 3 second-grade Grandmasters and 1 first-grade Grandmaster. Even among the martial arts sects in the world, we are not weak, the Arhat court head said. Compared to the difficult situation of the Shaolin Temple decades ago, the court heads at this moment felt like they were dreaming. All of this is because of the Venerable, Abbot Huiwen sighed and said slowly. Indeed. If it wasn't for the Venerable One, my Shaolin Temple would have been destroyed a long time ago. The other court heads immediately nodded in agreement. Perhaps the disciples who had just entered the Shaolin Temple did not know, but as old people, who had lived for decades of course, they knew how much the Venerable had helped the Shaolin Temple. Just as Abbot Huiwen and the court heads were about to continue their conversation, a voice suddenly rang out. A calm and leisurely voice suddenly sounded in their ears. All of you come to the back of the mountain. Abbot Huiwen was shocked. It's the Venerable One. The Venerable asked me to go to the back mountain. The court heads reacted, a trace of doubt flashing across their faces. The Venerable One personally asked them to go to the back of the mountain. This was something that had never happened before. In the past, even if the Venerable One had something to tell them, he would only inform one person. With this thought in mind, even the hot-tempered warrior monastery head realized that something was wrong. Don't think too much about it. Since the Venerable One asked us to go, let's go. Abbot Huiwen shook his head, slowly got up and walked towards the back of the mountain. The other court heads heard this, looked at each other and also followed behind Abbot Huiwen. Abbot Huiwen and the court heads came to Su Qin. Greetings, Venerable One. Abbot Huiwen bowed slightly and said respectfully, "Greetings, Venerable One." The other court heads did the same. "Get up." Su Qin waved his hand and said casually, "I asked you to come this time because I have something to say." Su Qin's eyes were calm and said lightly, "Today I will leave the Shaolin Temple and travel the world." As soon as these words came out, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads' expressions instantly froze. "No need to say anything else, I have decided on this matter." Su Qin looked at them and said, "Yes." Abbot Huiwen and the court heads said in a low voice with a gloomy look on their faces. The Shaolin Temple had been open for thousands of years, and the previous Venerable Arhat would choose to travel the world for a period of time. Therefore, Abbot Huiwen and the court heads could not bear to part with him, but they could accept it. After all, for the Venerable Arhat, traveling the world was also a kind of cultivation. If they stopped him, it would be tantamount to destroying the Venerable's cultivation. No one dared to bear such a sin. "After I leave, no one is allowed to come in here." Su Qin paused for a moment and then continued. He had set up the Pure Land of Energy Gathering formation in the back of the mountain, and did not intend to take it back when he left. After all, Su Qin could set up such a formation as long as there were enough jade stones. As for why Su Qin did not allow others to enter here, it was because the concentration of Yuan Qi here was too high. If martial artists below the Venerable Arhat cultivated here, they would probably explode in an instant from the huge amount of Yuan Qi of heaven and earth. Su Qin didn't want to be surrounded by blood when he came back here again. "Yes." Abbot Huiwen and the court heads nodded. The back of the mountain was where the Venerable secluded himself. Even if Su Qin did not mention this matter, they would still list this place as a forbidden area. "Venerable, when will you come back?" At this time, the warrior monastery court head could not help but ask. He asked this question from the bottom of his heart, and there was no utility in it at all. "When will you come back?" Su Qin smiled and did not reply. For Su Qin, even if he did return to the Shaolin Temple in the future, he would do so quietly and without alerting anyone. "Okay, you can all go down." After Su Qin finished speaking, he slowly closed his eyes. This time, Su Qin asked Abbot Huiwen and the court heads to come over only to inform them. After all, he had also stayed in the Shaolin Temple for nearly 30 years. Even if he really wanted to leave, he would not leave without saying a word. "Yes." Abbot Huiwen and the court heads finally bowed deeply to Su Qin before turning and leaving the back of the mountain. What should be left behind has been left behind, what should be done has been done, it's time to leave. Su Qin touched his eyebrows and thought silently in his heart. For the Shaolin Temple or for any great sect in the world, the most important thing is always the people, not the inherited divine arts and the like. For example, in the Shaolin Temple, even if the scripture pavilion recorded countless divine arts, if it were not for Su Qin, there would not even be a grade 1 great grandmaster in this generation. Half a day later, Su Qin quietly left the Shaolin Temple. Outside the Shaolin Temple, the sky is high and the ground is wide. Su Qin walked hundreds of meters in one step, slowly heading in a certain direction. Ha 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 ha. After being in the cage for a long time, I have returned to nature. Every time Su Qin took a step, a section of thick black hair grew. After just a few steps, his black hair spread over his shoulders. His eyes were bright and his skin was like jade. He did not look like an old-fashioned monk at all. Whether it is Venerable Arhat or a legend, even a severed limb can be reattached, not to mention growing hair again. Jianghu city is the ancient capital of 10 dynasties. It has a long heritage and has more Dao accumulation than the Shaolin Temple. It should be my next sign in place. It just so happens that my family Su is there now. Su Qin stopped and thought for a while before rushing towards Jianghu city. Chapter 94. Jianghu city. At this time it was the Shangyuan festival. Fireworks bloomed, setting off the beauty of Jianghu city. On the stargazing tower, the Emperor of Tang invited the officials to a banquet, drinking wine while admiring the fireworks. The princes were here and so was Crown Prince Li Sheng. The Shangyuan festival? I don't know if I can see the next Shangyuan festival. The Emperor of Tang looked up at the sky and muttered to himself. Your Majesty must have a long life. How can you not see the next Shangyuan festival? The officials hurriedly got up and knelt on the ground, not daring to look up. Haha. The Emperor of Tang glanced at the crowd and a mocking smile appeared on his face. My officials are right. I'm just lamenting. Yunyang, I feel that father's health has deteriorated again. Crown Prince Li Sheng stole a glance at the Emperor of Tang and whispered to Su Yueyun next to him. Su Yueyun heard this and her pretty face changed slightly. She shook her head and said, "You can't say this outside." Crown Prince Li Sheng sighed softly. How could he not understand this logic? All the officials said that His Majesty had a long life, but he felt that His Majesty's health had deteriorated. If this was heard by someone and spread, it would have a great impact on his position as the Crown Prince. However, Li Sheng was really concerned about the Emperor of Tang's health. Although Li Sheng had only known the Emperor of Tang for a few years, he could feel that the Emperor of Tang was sincere to him. He made him the Crown Prince because he really wanted to pass the throne to him. The Emperor of Tang treated him like this. How could Li Sheng have the heart to publicly lie to the Emperor of Tang? His Majesty sees things much more clearly than you. Su Yueyun hesitated for a moment and then said in a low voice, "In court, who is loyal and who is not loyal, the Emperor knows better than you. For now, you just need to take care of your own matters and do your best to stabilize your position as the Crown Prince. As for other matters, don't think too much about it because it's useless even if you think about it." Su Yueyun looked around and said quickly in a low voice. Ever since she and Li Sheng had entered the Eastern Palace, the Emperor of Tang had often come to visit them. Although Su Yueyun and the Emperor of Tang had not spoken much, she could tell that this old man who had one foot in the coffin, seemed to have a clear understanding of the situation in the imperial court and could see things more clearly than anyone else. Very soon, the Emperor of Tang seemed to have lost interest and hurriedly ended the banquet. The officials returned to their respective manners. Su Yueyun hesitated for a moment, then lowered his head and said to Li Sheng, "My father and mother are waiting for me in the manor. I won't go back to the palace for now." "All right." Crown Prince Li Sheng nodded. During the Shangyuan festival, Su Yueyun wanted to go back to the Su mansion to gather with her family for a while. How could he stop him? "I won't go so as not to disturb you," Crown Prince Li Sheng said very sensibly. No matter what, he was the Crown Prince of the imperial court. If he went back to the Su mansion with Su Yueyun, the family Su would not be able to celebrate the Shangyuan festival. After the two parted, Su Yueyun went to the Su mansion. Since Su Yueyun was conferred as the Crown Princess, the family Su became relatives of the imperial court and was rewarded with a mansion by the Emperor of Tang. This mansion was the current Su mansion. "Father, mother, I'm back." Su Yueyun got out of the jade carriage and walked toward the Su mansion. You're finally back. I've been waiting for you for a long time." The head of the family Su, Su Shimin, came over and said with a smile. Mother Su also stood up with a smile on her face. "Little sister, you're back." The two brothers of the family Su waved at Su Yueyun and greeted her. They quickly sat down and prepared to chat while eating. "Little sister, His Majesty asked you to go to the stargazing tower to enjoy the fireworks. It must be beautiful, right?" The eldest brother of the family Su, Su Sungho, said with a face full of envy. The stargazing tower was the tallest building in Chang'an City. It was said that one could see the entire Chang'an City from the top and take in all the beautiful scenery. "Beautiful?" Su Yueyun shook her head. "I think it's the most beautiful to watch the fireworks from here." "All right, Qinghao, it's not easy for your little sister to come back. As her brother, don't always mention these things." Su Shimin glared at Su Sungho. "Father, it's okay." Su Yueyun smiled and said, "Oh right, little sister." At this time, the second brother of the family Su, Su Qingyu, asked curiously, "Do you like that jade pendant?" "I think it's quite ordinary." Su Qingyu glanced at the jade pendant hanging on Su Yueyun's waist, his face full of doubts. In his opinion, that jade pendant was extremely ordinary, not even worth 10 coins. Not to mention that Su Yueyun was the crown princess. Even if she was only the daughter of the family Su, there was no way she would treat it as a treasure. "This jade pendant, ha?" Su Yueyun looked down and shook her head. "I don't know why I like it. In short, the first time I saw it, I wanted to wear it." Su Yueyun paused and continued, "I feel that as long as I wear this jade pendant, I can always be safe and happy." Su Yueyun's words made Su Qingyu helpless. "Little sister, you've been deceived. There's no jade pendant in this world that can keep people safe and happy." Su Qingyu was about to say a few more words, but when he saw Su Shimin staring at him fiercely, he immediately shrunk his head and didn't dare to continue. The family chatted as they ate. After they finished eating, Su Sungho suggested that they go outside and take a look at Chang'an City's market. This suggestion was obviously approved by most people. The family Su group walked out of the Su mansion and came to the market. They admired the fireworks that kept blooming under the night sky while looking at the street vendors hawking their goods. How great would it be if third brother could be here? Su Yuan thought of something, and her expression was obviously downcast. The Shangyuan festival was supposed to be a family reunion, and no one could be missing. But now their family Su was obviously missing Su Qin. I've already persuaded the county governor to ask for him from the Shaolin Temple, but then a certain venerable arhat seemed to have appeared in the Shaolin Temple. Su Shimin sighed softly and said. Originally, when Su Yuan became the crown princess, their family Su would be riding on the coattails of the royal family. Su Shimin was planning to get Su Qin out of the Shaolin Temple. At first, he and the county governor had a good discussion. The county governor patted his chest and assured him that everything would be fine. But later, a venerable arhat walked out of the Shaolin Temple and killed the devil lord who attacked Shaoshi Mountain. His name shocked the world, and the county governor never mentioned this again. Although Su Shimin was unwilling to accept this, there was nothing he could do. Because he was also a martial artist and he knew the meaning of arhat. At this moment, even the Emperor of Tang wouldn't dare to order the Shaolin Temple, let alone a mere county governor. There will be a way in the future, Su Yuan forced a smile and said. At this moment, Su Yuan was walking when she suddenly slipped and lost her balance. Coupled with her low spirits, she forgot to adjust her strength and was about to fall to the ground. Yep. Su Shimin immediately noticed the abnormality and rushed forward to support Su Yuan. However, suddenly, a slender figure walked towards them and actually rushed in front of Su Shimin to support Su Yuan. Watch where you're going. The slender figure walked with his back to the light. Whether it was Su Yuan or the rest of family Su, they couldn't see his face clearly. After the slender figure helped Su Yuan steady, he walked in the opposite direction of family Su. Thank you. Su Yuan instinctively wanted to thank him. But in the next moment, Su Yuan was stunned. A sense of closeness that seemed to come from the depths of his blood rushed to his heart. Wait a minute. Su Yuan suddenly turned around and shouted at the slender figure who was about to leave. Su Shimin and the rest of family Su saw Su Yuan's reaction and also looked at the slender figure in confusion. The slender figure paused as if hesitating, but finally slowly turned around. Under the curtain of stars, fireworks bloomed. It was beautiful. The slender figure slowly turned around facing the starlight, and smiled at Su Yuan and the rest. Little sister, long time no see. End of Volume 1. Chapter 95. Chang and city was filled with fireworks. Su Qin stood there with his hands behind his back. His eyes were calm as he looked at Su Yuan and family Su with a smile on his face. Su Qin's main purpose in coming to Chang and city was to find a new sign in place, and to meet family Su. You are? Su Yuan's eyes widened when he saw Su Qin. He felt that the man in front of him was very familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. When Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple, Su Yuan was only 3 years old. Almost 30 years had passed and his childhood memories were blurred. You are Qiner? Su Shimin asked with a trembling voice. Unlike Su Yuan, Su Shimin recognized Su Qin the moment he saw him. When Su Qin entered the Shaolin Temple, he was still 10 years old and his eyebrows had grown a little. Even after 30 years, Su Shimin could still see the shadow of the 10-year-old Su Qin. Qiner? Its third brother? Su Sungho and Su Qingyu looked at each other in disbelief. It's me. Su Qin said lightly. It's really third brother. Third brother, when did you arrive in Chang'an? The two family Su brothers immediately ran to Su Qin and looked him up and down. They were half surprised and half happy. Qin, what is going on? Su Shimin strode forward and looked at Su Qin in disbelief. Su Sungho and Su Qingyu also looked at Su Qin curiously. I stayed in the Shaolin Temple for almost 30 years. I didn't want to stay any longer, so I left, Su Qin said calmly. I don't want to stay here anymore. Su Sungho and Su Qingyu looked at each other in disbelief. The Shaolin Temple was a great martial arts sect in the world. A few years ago, it was rumored that the venerable arhat was in charge of it. How could such a behemoth let its disciples go so easily? Qin, tell me honestly. What's going on? Did you commit a crime and escape? Su Shimin's expression kept changing. Finally he asked solemnly. This was also what Su Shimin was most worried about. He was afraid that Su Qin would go astray. With the current foundation of the Shaolin Temple, if Su Qin really makes a big mistake in the Shaolin Temple, who can protect him? Father, if I really made a mistake, would I be able to walk out of the Shaolin Temple? Su Qin shook his head and said. When Su Shimin heard this, his expression immediately eased. Indeed. He was a little worried just now. What kind of place was the Shaolin Temple? Without the abbot's permission, would Su Qin be able to walk out? Ah. I didn't expect that today's Shangyuan festival would be the day our family reunited. Su Shimin was in a good mood. Little Qin, how did you know that our family Su moved to Chang'e? Su Sungho asked curiously. This. Su Qin had already thought of an answer. I went back to Yen City and heard from the people there that you are here. I see. Su Shimin nodded slightly. The fact that the family Su moved out of Cangzhou was not a secret. You just had to ask anyone to find out. Little Qin, this time our family Su is successful. Guess who my little sister married? The crown prince. Our family Su is now a relative of the emperor. Su Qingyue became complacent and immediately shared this matter with Su Qin. Third brother. Su Yueyun stood up, her pretty face was also full of joy. The few of them chatted for a while. Su Sungho and Su Qingyu asked questions here and there. After this conversation, everyone no longer had any doubts about Su Qin's identity. If it was a coincidence that there were two people in the world who looked similar, Su Qin obviously knew everything about the family Su. If Su Qin did not mention some things, even Su Sungho and Su Qingyu would have forgotten. Third brother, so many years have passed. Why do you look so young? Su Yueyun looked at Su Qin with some envy. After all, Su Qin was sent to the Shaolin Temple when he was 10 years old. Now almost 30 years had passed. Logically speaking, Su Qin at this age should be middle-aged and have experienced the vicissitudes of life. But now, Su Qin had bright eyes, long black hair and jade-like skin. He was even more energetic than a 20-year-old youth. The other members of the Su family also noticed this and clicked their tongues in wonder. Maybe the Shaolin Temple's lamp and Buddha statue can slow down aging? Su Qin thought for a while and said, although the Venerable Arhat could keep his youth forever, ordinary people could also live a long life if they stayed away from worldly disputes. I'm afraid that's the case, Su Shimin sighed. Su Qin's words made sense. But how many people in the world could give up everything in the world and be willing to stay away from the lamp and Buddha statue? Little Qin, I heard that there's an Arhat in the Shaolin Temple. You've been in the Shaolin Temple for so long. Have you seen him? Su Sungho suddenly thought of something and asked with interest. For them, the Venerable Arhat was too far away from being a martial arts legend. If it weren't for Su Qin, they wouldn't even mention him. Su Shimin's eyes lit up when he heard this. Qin, have you seen the Venerable Arhat? What kind of person is he? Su Shimin lowered his voice when he said this, as if he was afraid that the Venerable Arhat in the Shaolin Temple would hear him. Su Qin thought for a moment and said seriously, nothing special. He's about the same as me. Su Sungho heard this and said after a while, Little Qin, you're really good at joking. The other family Su people also chuckled. They thought that Su Qin probably hadn't seen the Venerable Arhat in the Shaolin Temple. Qin, don't say such things in the future. The Venerable Arhat of Buddhism is very powerful. Maybe one day he'll know what you're saying. Su Shimin reminded Su Qin with a serious expression. They walked for a while and returned to the Su mansion. By the way, Qin, what are you going to do this time? Su Shimin asked after a moment of hesitation. With the current status of the family Su, even if Su Qin didn't do anything, they could still support him for a lifetime. However, Su Shimin was born as a martial artist and hated those rich kids who only knew how to eat, drink and play. Therefore, Su Sungho and Su Qingyu joined the army early. Little Qin, you should join the army too. I can recommend you to the general. Su Sungho immediately suggested. That's not good. Little Qin doesn't have the talent for martial arts. If he really joins the army, not only will it be difficult for him to be promoted, but he will also be looked down upon. Su Qingyu shook his head and rejected. The rules in the army were very simple. Whoever had the biggest fist was the boss. With Su Qin's weak appearance, he would definitely be bullied. Su Yueyun hesitated for a while and couldn't help but say, Can I ask His Highness to let third brother work in the palace? His Highness is short of manpower now. Third brother can go to the East Palace as a counselor. Don't worry, it's just a title. You won't have to do anything. Hearing Su Yueyun's words, Su Sungho and Su Qingyu both nodded. The salary of a counselor to His Highness the Crown Prince would definitely be good. At least it would be much better than being a soldier in the army. Qin, what do you think? Su Shimin was also quite satisfied. He looked at Su Qin and asked tentatively. No matter where he went, he always had to listen to Su Qin's wishes. If Su Qin didn't want to, the family Su didn't want to force him. The Imperial Palace. Su Qin slightly raised his head and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Chapter 96. In the end, Su Qin agreed to Su Yueyun's suggestion. His purpose for coming to Chang'an City this time was to find a new place to sign in. Looking at the entire Chang'an City, only the palace in the Imperial City could have a large amount of Taoist connotation. After all, Chang'an City was the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. After thousands of years, the outer city had been rebuilt countless times. Only the Imperial City had remained to this day. With Su Qin's current strength, unless there was a martial arts legend in the palace, sneaking in would be as simple as eating and drinking. But in any case, it was good to have an identity that could conceal his identity. At least Su Qin would have a reason to enter and leave the palace freely in the future. Okay. I'll tell His Highness when I go back tonight. Su Yueyun was very concerned about his third brother's matter. After returning to the Eastern Palace, he mentioned this matter to Crown Prince Li Sheng. And Crown Prince Li Sheng naturally agreed without hesitation. One had to know that since Su Qin was Su Yueyun's third brother, which meant that he was Li Sheng's brother-in-law. If a family member wanted a job, of course he would not refuse. The next day, Su Qin officially moved into the Eastern Palace. And in order to please Su Qin, his brother-in-law, Crown Prince Li Sheng even arranged the right spring square in the Eastern Palace for Su Qin. As expected of the ancient capital of the 10 dynasties. Whether it's the layout or other aspects, it's almost perfect. Su Qin stood in the attic of the right spring square and looked at the entire imperial city. He nodded slightly in his heart. Compared to the vicissitudes of the Shaolin Temple, the imperial palace was another kind of majestic and domineering. Every corner revealed the supremacy of imperial power. I hope it won't disappoint me, a trace of anticipation flashed in Su Qin's eyes. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During this month, Su Qin visited a small part of the palace. Sure enough, it was as Su Qin expected. He could also sign in at the palace. And to Su Qin's surprise, there were far more check-in locations in the Imperial Palace than in the Shaolin Temple. In the Shaolin Temple, the only places that could repeatedly sign in for Su Qin were the Demon Subduing Tower, the Scripture Pavilion, and the Bodhi Court. But in the palace, there were at least 5 places where Su Qin could repeatedly sign in. The reason why he said, at least, was because the palace was too big. There were still many places where Su Qin didn't sign in, so he had to use them at least. So far, Su Qin had signed in at the Longevity Hall, Stargazing Tower, Taiji Palace, White Jade Square, Crop Altar, and so on. For example, in the Temple of Immortals, Su Qin signed in and obtained a copy of the Longevity Secret Art. The art of longevity was a Taoist secret art. It was said to be able to refine one's qi to become immortal and prolong one's life. Every 100 years or hundreds of years, there would be news of a lucky person who obtained the art of longevity and was able to prolong one's life by decades or hundreds of years. The only pity is that the threshold for entering the longevity secret art is too high. It requires a kind of physique that is close to the Tao. It is precisely because of this that one can be extremely close to the profound meaning of the unity of heaven and man in the longevity secret art. However, how rare is a physique that is close to the Tao? 1 in a million people is even rarer than a grade 1 great grandmaster. In other words, even if others get the longevity secret art, it is very likely that they won't be able to enter it. But Su Qin is different. With the system's infusion, the so-called threshold of the longevity secret art can be ignored. On the night of obtaining the longevity secret art, Su Qin had already entered the longevity secret art. In the following month, Su Qin relied on his Arhat level and quickly cultivated the longevity secret art to great accomplishment, extending his life by 200 years. 200 years of Shouyuan. Su Qin's face was full of joy. 200 years of Shouyuan, plus the 800 years of Shouyuan of Venerable Arhat, as long as there are no accidents, Su Qin can live for more than 1,000 years. This is based on the premise that Su Qin will not make any progress in the next 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Su Qin's face was filled with emotion. The Empire of Tang has only been around for more than 500 years. Su Qin alone is equivalent to the Empire of Tang. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin was very satisfied. The only regret is that the threshold for entering the longevity secret art is too high and cannot be popularized. Even if Su Qin himself has cultivated it to great accomplishment, he can't let others learn this Taoist secret art. In addition to obtaining the longevity secret art at the Long Life Temple, Su Qin also obtained the star traction technique, outside the stargazing tower. The star traction technique can draw the power of billions of stars for one's own use. It can be used to kill enemies and protect oneself. Of course, the star traction technique has very high requirements for the user. At least a peak first-grade condensed divine sense is qualified to cultivate it. And even a peak first-grade condensed divine sense can only draw one or a few stars at most. The effect is not too great. It has the same effect as the lunar body refining art. Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The lunar body refining technique can gather the power of the lunar body, and the star traction technique can draw the power of the stars. Perhaps others think that the moon is the moon and the stars are the stars, and the two are not the same thing at all. But Su Qin knows that even the moon and the sun in the sky are just one of the billions of stars. The difference between them is nothing more than distance. Other than that, Su Qin also obtained the white jade true body, at the white jade square, the innate spirit liquid, outside the crop altar in the imperial palace and so on. The white jade true body is a body refining technique, similar to the invincible Vajra divine art of the Shaolin temple. Su Qin is not interested in it. With his current physical body, even if he cultivates the white jade true body, to great accomplishment, there won't be any improvement. But the innate spirit liquid of the crop altar made Su Qin happy for a long time. Innate spirit liquid is a magical liquid born from heaven and earth. It is extremely rare. Usually, only venerable Arhat or martial arts legends can find 1 or 2 drops when they travel the world and are very lucky. But the effect of the innate spirit liquid is also very significant. It can greatly improve the cultivation progress of Arhat level. After Su Qin obtained the innate spirit liquid, he tried to swallow a drop. As a result, his strength skyrocketed. If Su Qin didn't suppress it in time and wanted to wait until he had complete confidence to break through, he would have probably broken through to the 4th heavenly layer Arhat realm by now. A drop of innate spirit liquid is probably comparable to 10 glazed golden cores, and it's the kind that doesn't take time to absorb. Su Qin exclaimed in his heart. One must know that even with the past Amitabha Sutra, Su Qin needs several days to completely absorb each glazed golden core. But the innate spirit liquid is different. Not only is it 10 times more effective than the glazed golden core, but it also saves Su Qin a lot of time. This in and out, the improvement of Su Qin's strength is simply terrifying. Sure enough, more people still need to come out and run around. If I continue to stay in the Shaolin Temple, when can I get these treasures? Su Qin couldn't help but smile. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.